Hello my friends, and at last the sucker is done. Holy crap, what a ride that was. Between everyone getting walloped by some awful... Wait, hang on. We're not doing those backdrops anymore, are we? So, let's pop on some... there we go, that'll do. But, yeah, between a really dreadful bout of flu that Baby Owl brought home with her, housing issues, serious technical issues, a sudden and significant financial cock-up, and more, well, it's done now, and hopefully it's worth the wait. Now, before we get the ball rolling on this Leviathan, a few very quick things. Admin-y stuff. If you want to get right into the meat and potatoes, the bookmarks should be working again. Sorry about that. So go on ahead. For everyone else, well, first up, as mentioned, we're actually going to convert the Summer Drive milestones into just permanent milestones, meaning that as we reach them, the actual reward will come into play. So, yes, for all of you asking when I'll be getting around to that Silent Hill F-series, well, we'll get there. Oh, and Mrs. Owl is already working on her gluttony script. No ETA on that, due to the aforementioned havoc, which unfortunately doesn't look like it'll ease up until like April. Adulting plus the modern housing market. Crikey Moses. Anyone got a tent we could borrow? Secondly, and please take note, this video represents an experiment. You will note that it's one long thing, rather than many parts published separately and then sort of pooped together into one massive video. Apparently, YouTube really does not like that sort of serial publication style. I personally think that it does have a certain charm to it, Green Mile style, but it is what it is, and that's the important part. C. Which do you prefer? The current setup, or one where you would get a video at most every 6 to 8 weeks, but it would be one completed, finished thing, where we would do a whole arc, or possibly a whole manga in one single whack? The upsides, of course, would be consistency, quality, flexibility, and I will be perfectly honest here, probably better videos, and what Mrs. Owl refuses to stop calling the internet historian style. We would be moving to a when it's done, naturally phasing this in gradually as we wrap up existing series. Please let me know in the comments what you think. It's an idea with some huge upsides and some big downsides, as we do rely on the income from these videos quite a bit right now, and I really worry that patrons and channel members would get bored, assume that I'd done a runner, and unsubscribe. It would require significant trust on both sides. We will do a poll down the line, but please give it some thought. Thirdly, as always, please go and read the story for yourselves. Today's manga is really, really good. Pretty obscure, but still easily available in English on digital distribution platforms. These silly little videos are not a substitute for the real thing. Trust me, you're missing out on loads of art, story beats, character stuff, and more that I just can't or do not cover here. And I'm not just talking about the ever more necessary censoring. And yeah, okay, last thing. This is a dark manga. A very dark manga. It's not especially gruesome, but it covers topics that are a lot, even for this channel. So while I know some of you want more detailed trigger warnings, this one is all about the twists and turns, and I would hate to spoil it. So I am going to say an extra strength content warning over this video. If issues of abuse, DV, bullying, and let's say young people exploring the Hemingway exit are things that bother you, proceed with extreme caution. You've been warned. Anyways, let's get this done. Takopi's Original Sin, a literal translation of Takopi no Genzai, its Japanese title, and yes, I learned a new word today, is penned by Taizan 5, an obscure but reasonably prolific mangaka known for writing, let's say, superficially cheerful, but in reality really bleak, often challenging materials involving young kids. She does good work, and I will say that despite her stuff being, okay, so people would probably call it gap moe, but I'm not the biggest fan of that as a blanket genre classification here. I'd probably call it a story of innocence lost, a genre I absolutely adore, by the way, as long as it's done right. And this generally features a seemingly happy story at the start, only for things to quickly get darker and see an innocent, naive, and generally young character encountering the real world with an outcome similar to a bunny hopping into an industrial bread slicer. The world and its darker elements thus corrupt and twist said innocent. Think more Made in Abyss than Higurashi. It's also published in Jump Plus, a Shueisha-owned platform that does include your younger shonen stuff, but also things like Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, which are generally a few boobs away from being a seinen. It was also recently adapted into an anime that... Has anyone seen this thing? Is it worth checking out? Let me know in the comments or on our Discord. The manga though, yeah, this puppy is worth your time. So, as mentioned, if you haven't, as always, please go and pick it up, give it a read, and then we will take a look together. Because this one is quite a ride. We've got thrills, we've got chills, and we've got a manga that's going to do its level best to actually eat your soul. And today, drumroll, I get to introduce you to it. So, from the cover, we can already tell a few things thematically. I'm not just talking about the heartbreaking image of a young girl crying her eyes out while smiling in a very Higurashi manner, giving us a hint as to our tone and subject matter moving forwards, but also because of her pinky. You may know what this refers to, but for everyone else, I will explain this one later. Our story opens in Hokkaido as we meet a young girl who we'll quickly learn is named Shizuka Kuze. Shizuka being a reasonably common female name in Japan that generally combines some kanji meaning quiet or tranquil with, I think, flowers pretty common. And this name always gives the impression of someone very gentle, very dutiful, very placid, and very soft. Your sort of Japanese female ideal, which is why the name is so common. But here, this name does not bode well. And if the name reminds you of another manga/anime character, well, hold that thought. We get right to the odd little narrative mechanism that'll be driving our plot forwards, as Shizuka spies several tentacles emerging from a pipe. No, don't worry about it. This is a really dark manga, but it doesn't go quite that way. We're not in Narutaru territory, folks, so don't worry, and yes, that horribleness is on my manga I am probably never going to cover unless an Albard picks it out list. If you've read it, you know why. We see that the thing in the pipe was actually, oh hey there. It's an adorable little octopus monster saying it's hungry. Oh, and we see that Shizuka is emaciated, filthy, bruised, and banged up. Joy. And yeah, we're right into it with this shit. We'll quickly learn that it's an alien, and yeah, okay manga, a Happyan from Planet Happy, presumably traveling to and meeting a Shittian from Planet Shitty, but for some reason, he found himself pursued and starving. Now, this does raise an interesting question, as well as giving us our first of many tangents. Sorry, non-tangent lovers, but don't worry, this one will only take a second. So, perceptive fans of Japanese media, from games to manga to movies to TV, will likely have noticed something odd. If you ask most folks in the West to draw you an alien, they'd probably draw you either a grey, you know, one of those cursed things with the eyes, or if they're feeling creative, maybe a xenomorph or a Romulan or something. However, if you ask most Japanese folks, from old folks to teenagers, to draw you an alien, you would almost always get something resembling a vaguely humanoid mutant octopus. And you'll find this similarly in games, movies, and manga. The question is, why? Why do folks over there inevitably think of sea life when they think of aliens? Well, aside from the fact that horrible, horrible things live in the deepest parts of our world, well, one theory is that it's similar to the description of the Martians in H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, but I'm not sure about that. The theory that I tend to agree most with is that, well, so, allegedly, this one goes back to the late 70s and the release of one of the first popular arcade systems, Space Invaders. Designer Tomohiro Nishikado allegedly not wanting humanoid enemies for his game. Remember, this was slap bang in the middle of something of a moral panic around violence in media and the Japanese youth. Instead based them on sea life, vis-a-vis a crab, a squid, and an octopus, and you will note the majority of early video games do not feature humanoid enemies. Really interesting. Maybe we'll talk about why someday, but yeah, as the idea caught on, the rest is history. Just look at this squiddy bastard. So yeah, to this day, Japanese alien designs will generally look like oceanic creatures, but especially octopi. Anyways, back over, Shizuka gives the starving creature some bread to eat, and we see that its tentacles can basically extend at will. Oh, and it says pee a lot. Don't overthink this. Pee is generally the onomatopoeia for a sort of cutesy-poo chirping sound. A small fluffy burb, for instance, probably goes pee. And with Japan loving to put creature sounds into a name for kids, in the way that they'll call cats Nyan-chan or dogs Wan-chan, pet birds are often called Pee-chan, quite possibly because of the way they smell. Anyways, we learn that the alien's true name is Crikey Moses, Nue Inu Kf, maybe a sort of cultural nod with Inu being dog, Nue being a Japanese yokai, probably closest to a chimera, but I could just as easily be reaching here. She cannot pronounce it, so he tells her to give him a name, and she goes with Takopi, with Tako meaning octopus and Pi, as mentioned, being the cute sound he makes. We also see that Takopi is both incredibly kind-hearted and not especially bright or knowledgeable, especially when it comes to humans. And yeah, as you can probably already guess, this naivete is not going to last long or end well. So, with our core players in play and a very familiar scene set, we are all primed for the wave of darkness that is looming up over our heads. Let's take a look. Now, right, this is where the story starts getting moving and where you should probably start paying attention. As a lot of things are being set up, they seem innocuous now, but are going to tie back into the larger story later in a big way. Oh, and it's also where I need to start extrapolating certain things, especially relationships and timeline stuff from clues, context, and common sense, so apologies if I cock anything up. I will do my level best to explain and tie everything together at the end. In an attempt to make friends with Shizuka, and also to repay the debt for her giving him food, Takopi offers her a device from his planet, one of the many happy gadgets, this one being a little band with wings on it, strongly resembling a children's toy, but this will allow her to fly. Now, this is honestly where, in my opinion, Taizan tips her hand and reveals, honestly, what I think is the primary influence behind this manga. As, yeah, if you know, you know. I'll go into it at the end of the video, as it's going to tie heavily back into the themes present. But for now, savvy viewers might click. in that Takopi possesses a number of gadgets that look like some cheap dollar store plonk that'll break the second baby I'll wax me over the head with it, parenting, but actually have obscene, nearly godlike power. And yeah, this does really further my little theory of Takopi being basically an analog of a specific Japanese kids manga/anime. Again, if you know, you know. Shizuka surprisingly declines, saying that she's busy and also that, even if she were able to fly, it wouldn't really do anything for her. Not quite the reaction you'd expect. She's clearly got stuff going on. As she walks away, a confused Takopi notes that her backpack is damaged and is also covered with insults and general nastiness. Yeah, Shizuka is clearly the victim of extreme bullying at school, having been singled out somehow, possibly due to her being poor, pretty constantly dirty, disheveled, and living in a filthy house, as we will see later. So yeah, we've sort of established the core idea at play here. A naive, fairy godmother-esque being is going to try and help a dreadfully despondent, neglected, and bullied girl to be happy. What could possibly go wrong? I don't think a pumpkin and a few mice are going to do the trick. The next day, we see Shizuka hiding in a pipe with Takopi, who has no idea what's going on or why they're hiding. But we soon see why. Shizuka's bully is revealed to be a popular and attractive girl who we will soon learn is named Marina Kirarazaka, who has essentially gotten the entire class to turn on her, leading the charge with her circle of friends and just basically making a hobby out of tormenting her. Now yeah, sorry, there's going to be quite a few tangents early on. They'll even out, I promise. But we've talked about bullying in Japanese schools quite extensively in previous videos, but particularly those terrible Another videos and my slightly better Gan series, so we won't go into it too deeply here. In short, yeah, it's a huge problem in Japanese schools, despite there being a shitzillion initiatives, mandates, anti-bullying assemblies, anonymous reporting, and the like. The reality of the situation is that Japanese teachers at best find themselves wanting to help but not having the tools to do so, as they are unable to really enforce any discipline or consequences due to A, the petty, micromanaging, unrealistic, and far too powerful PTA, and B, Mimamoru, the modern and generally hands-off teaching style encouraged in Japanese schools, and C, the fear that the teacher will be punished for their students misbehaving, not exactly an unfounded fear either, and at worst the teacher or the school just straight up ignoring the bullying, viewing it as necessary for the class to pick a Jonah, someone to direct negative energy and nastiness at, hopefully functioning as a safety valve, allowing their students to focus on studies and not acting out in other antisocial or delinquent ways that'll bring the school as a whole into disrepute. A very Japanese way of dealing with it, and I wish I was kidding. It's a truly ugly situation. And while it is a tiny bit better now than it once was, it's still kind of dreadful, especially with the advent of the internet and social media, something that students are generally not allowed to have, but generally do, allowing for severe bullying to occur anonymously and, more importantly, extramurally. Anyways, we see that they're basically just setting out to make her life hell. Takopi is naturally oblivious, and instead trying everything he can think of to make Shizuka smile and cheer her up, whips out another gadget, the happy camera, taking their photo. Shizuka is unimpressed. A school week or so passes, with Takopi trying different tactics to cheer her up, none of which work, naturally, because the little creature doesn't really understand what's wrong here. In essence, he's trying to treat stage 3 cancer by putting a band-aid on it. They do sort of become friends at least, although Shizuka seems unwilling to disclose what's happening to her in any great detail, or more importantly, the reasons why. We do see, though, that there is one thing in her life that does bring her joy. Her dog Chappy, an enormous friendly border collie. Takopi marvels. Suddenly, Shizuka is smiling for the first time, and we get another revelation as we start trying to piece things together in terms of just why her life is so rotten. And this is going to bring us to the first major tangent of the video, as this shit is really interesting, and I haven't had a good chance to talk about it before, so let's do it. And oh boy, am I going to have to tread carefully here. So, as Shizuka and the little alien talk, she tells him that her mother has already left for work and that she works as an escort, meaning that, okay, so I think this was a translation issue, and my initial thoughts were that her mother became a prostitute. But we'll learn later that it's a bit more complex, and yeah, it's a cultural thing that'll need a touch of explaining. I'm not going to go into it too deeply here as, well, YouTube, but prostitution in Japan, or are we supposed to call it sex work now? I honestly have no idea. Anyways, yeah, it has an absolutely fascinating history, one that, yeah, again, because YouTube, I won't be able to go into too much. Suffice to say, it was pretty commonplace in ancient Japan. Open, even. And even the incredibly authoritarian Tokugawa shogunate, in a moment of surprising clarity, didn't try to outright ban it. And keep in mind, those fuckers tried banning nearly everything else, including the primary religion of the country. Instead, they relegated it to special red light districts of cities, de facto confining yujo, the term used for prostitutes then, to these areas and specific quarters. They then instituted a law saying that, on pain of serious punishment, yujo were not permitted to leave under any circumstances aside for a once-a-year excursion in spring. This resulted in yujo being treated as slaves, property owned by their madams or masters, generally the latter, unless they were extremely high-ranking courtesans. You've probably run into this unfortunate side of this a fair bit in historical manga. We'll talk about it if the chance ever arises. I suspect it'll be in Blade of the Immortal, but you're probably more familiar with the trope of someone trying to buy a prostitute from their master for the purpose of getting them a better life or even marriage. Anyways, this continued for some time, until the Meiji era rolled around, whereupon it became known as fuzoku, a euphemism which translates quite endearingly as selling flowers or selling springtime, and with the Meiji liberalization of Japan, was made pretty much de facto legal everywhere. But this led to a major problem. A common talking point for the frequently, rabidly sex-negative strains of Japanese feminism, which is how Asian feminism generally operates, and yeah, I get why. But yeah, incredibly high demand resulted in impoverished women from rural areas, women taken captive, or women whose family had racked up debts, basically being sold and forced into it. And this got even uglier during World War II and the immediate aftermath. Just Google comfort women if you know you want your soul to die. It's some nasty shit. And sadly, this remained a problem until the increasingly socially conservative government, likely bowing to outside pressure, finally passed a law in 1958 making prostitution illegal. But in a very Japanese way, semantics came into play here, and well, this is where things get funny, and also, how do I phrase this on YouTube? Okay, so, due to the way the law was worded, let's call it sausage in bun was classified as prostitution, but this left every other sexy time act including butt stuff, completely legal, and as it stands, that's the case today. While a lot of establishments, see most, do not allow foreigners of any stripe. And those that do, well, let's say you'd better know what you're doing, as you're probably going to get scammed. You can go to places like Kabukicho in Tokyo and find just streets and streets of cat houses openly advertising, some of which are practically skyscrapers. It is a crap-zillion yen industry. However, this is where we start getting more relevant to the story. See, as we will learn way later, her mother is in fact a hostess, not an escort. Again, I'm not sure whether to chalk this up as a translation issue or possibly Shizuka just misunderstanding. Now, very briefly, this also grew out of the very early red light district practices, generally for higher end clientele. Let's just say courtesans and the like were and remain a very open and advertised phenomenon in Japan today, including some aspects that don't really translate well to Western culture. Because in brief, a hostess, or if you're a woman, a host bar or host club, is sort of paid, flirty, but mostly platonic companionship plus booze. You basically come in, pay a fee, and are then seated and attended to by an attractive woman, often one-on-one or sometimes in a small group. They'll pour drinks for you, flirt with you, be nice to you, chat with you about non-sexy things, and I guess in racier establishments, may sit in your lap or rub your back. A lot of these now are themed, for instance French maids, idols, etc. And there are even ones that'll cater to gay men, but I've yet to encounter one in the wild. You'd probably find them in Shibuya or the LGBT-friendly zone of Kabukicho. Hostess bars and hostess clubs range from silly to sleazy to really upmarket places where the seating fee will make you goggle and the hostesses look like damn supermodels. In a lot of the better ones, everyone will know your name as you become a regular, and once you do, you will often find a specific hostess that'll come over and serve you every time. It's honestly kind of sad when you think about it, and I think a large portion of their modern popularity boils down to the Japanese loneliness epidemic. But yeah, you'll find a good few clubs and bars essentially wherever you go, and while they are on the surface platonic, if you know the right ones and you know how to ask, you can often pay extra for sexy times of a sort, albeit generally a meetup elsewhere. The job is surprisingly safe, the odd serial killer accepted, especially for that sort of work, but visiting a hostess bar can be dangerous. Sort of. See, on paper, hostess bars are heavily regulated, but in reality, it's Japan. So, not really, especially considering that these tend to be at least loosely run by the Yakuza, albeit through a sort of 10 degrees of Kevin Bacon connection to organized crime. And due to this lack of regulation, it is stupidly common to get scammed. These generally work as follows. You'll go in, pay your fee, have a few drinks, and then when it's time for the tab, you'll be told that you actually owe thousands of dollars for other fees that they totally told you about when you entered. Why are you complaining? Oh, and by the way, you can't leave until you pay them or find someone who can. That's a very nice watch and car you have there, sir. There are even darker stories involving men or women being told by a specific host or hostess to meet up after for some nookie, only to find themselves kidnapped and trafficked. And an unfortunate trend in host clubs has become, well, to entrap women into enormous debts to force them into sex or prostitution to pay these off. And there are also persistent urban legends about host or hostess bars where you will simply vanish and have your organs harvested, but again, these are probably just urban legends. So yeah, while these are not something discussed in polite company, and Shizuka would probably be quite embarrassed at her mother's line of work, It's on par with, or maybe higher status than, say, her being a stripper in the West. Or I guess doing OnlyFans would be more common now. Haha, we'll see if this video stays monetized. Anyways. Back over with the duo, we see them talk well into the night, with a lot of cutesy-poo misunderstandings on behalf of Takopi, generally misinterpreting something either dark or sad Shizuka says. For instance, when she says that she doesn't have a dad, we'll later learn that his name is Takeshi, and that he divorced Mrs. Kuze and left them some time ago. We never find out the reasons as to why, sadly, but the loose fandom consensus seems to be that he left for another woman. Takopi, however, thinks that she means that humans can reproduce asexually. Yeah, there's rather a lot of this, and while it's fun enough, I'm not going to go into it much. If you want, I'd strongly recommend reading this for yourselves, which you should be naughty. But after he left Shizuka's mother, she was left in dire straits. As we'll discuss later, divorce in Japan isn't how you think about it in other countries. Short version, Mrs. Kuze was left with nothing, no alimony, no assets, no child support, and no earning capacity. At least this would be my guess, leading her to having to work as a hostess to make ends meet. We'll also learn later that she's astonishingly pretty, and I wish I could say this state of affairs is uncommon. But yeah, putting two and two together, she probably had some sort of breakdown, and this also probably prompted her to just disengage from life as a whole, resulting in her neglecting her daughter. We also see that Shizuka's basically the only thing she has in her life that isn't utterly awful is Chappie, a prospect that fills Takopi with inexplicable anxiety, likely because aliens also have a sense of narrative causality. As they walk him back to his little concrete pipe home, we get a little more foreshadowing in terms of his mission. While his memories are a bit foggy, as far as he remembers, he was dispatched to spread happiness to those who need it. So he's basically a somehow more irritating Care Bear. Alright, but he was cautioned to never break the commandments of his people. Regardless, he resolves to help Shizuka to become happy, and tells her as much. In response, with it being late, she says that it's time for her to go home now, presumably to walk her dog. But he is astonished to see that she is indeed smiling. Okay then, the next afternoon, we do one of those, I swear there's a word for this, you know, where you see an image of someone looking happy and then immediately smash cut to them in the same stance looking, yeah, like this. Anyone know what this is called? Feel free to let me know in the comments. But regardless, Takopi is surprised to see a battered, injured, and hollow-eyed Shizuka. But worse yet, Chappie isn't with her and she's holding his collar. Oh hell. He asks her what's going on, and she tells him that she got into a fight with a friend, but seems unwilling to say more. In response, he offers her a gadget, the reconciliation ribbon, which, when tied to the pinky fingers of a pair of squabbling people, will cause them to instantly become friends again. You may know what this is referring to, and yeah, this is the thing we saw on the cover. It's a nod to a genuinely fascinating, but not especially well-known Japanese myth / superstition / folk belief going back way in time. It originated in China, and it generally plays out as a manifestation of En, which we've discussed before. It's a Japanese version of destiny or fate. In this case, two people who are fated to be together in some capacity. They are connected by an invisible red thread, running from their hearts to the heart of the other, exiting and entering via their pinky fingers. I have no idea why. Now, this generally applies to romantic connections. You will even see some Japanese folk raise a pinky as a kind of good luck gesture when discussing their crush, for instance. But it can also, I guess, apply to other profound connections, such as a deep friendship. and you will see imagery of the red thread in a whole bunch of anime and manga, including Madoka Magica or Yu Yu Hakusho. Keep an eye out and you will spot it. It's as recognizable as, say, Cupid and his arrows aren't Westerners. The miserable Shizuka thinks for a moment and then says that she would like to borrow the gadget. This makes Takopi overjoyed, and we get some incredibly ominous foreshadowing as one of the Happien commandments is revealed. The gadgets must only be used in the presence of a Happien. Never, ever must one be given blindly to a human. However, this is the first time Shizuka has ever asked him for something, and desperate to make her smile again, he agrees. She leaves, presumably to find the friend in question, and an overjoyed Takopi is left in his pipe, waiting for her to come and see him later in the day. Takopi waits and waits and waits. Finally, starting to worry a bit, he leaves to find her, heading over to her house nearby. He calls out for her and gets no response. Takopi opens the door to the Kuze residence, and we immediately get an idea of just how much Shizuka's mother has disengaged. The entire place is an utter, festering disaster. It's filthy, messy, and just a dreadful sight to behold. Searching for his friend, Takopi looks around and sees, oh my holy sweet Jiminy Christmas, why? Okay, so, how the utter, blistering hell do I even begin to describe this? Okay, so, YouTube is death on even mentioning this subject, so we will have to approach it very obliquely and very delicately. Shizuka has indeed used his ribbon, only she's used it to become a Muppet. By which I mean, she decided to Kermit, you know what, you can see the image, put 2 and 2 together. Holy crap, manga. That is a dark twist. It's a haunting and utterly devastating panel, reminding me a lot of Higurashi at its best. And while Takopi is able to get her down, Shizuka Kuze is long dead. Now, obviously, I cannot show you much of this sequence, but as he tries to revive her, he initially thinks it was a freak accident, or maybe just her not understanding how to use the ribbon. But to his credit, he does figure out that, yeah, she decided to Kermit due to whatever happened between her and her friend. Or did she? What was up with the collar? What the hell is going on here? We also see him musing about what to do next. His charge took the Hemingway exit, shall we say, and while his gadgets can do just about anything, they can't raise the dead. Wait, yes, they absolutely can raise the dead, or at least next best thing. He thinks back to the camera and the photograph he took and reveals that the camera does in fact have a special hidden purpose. Only one photograph from the camera can exist at any time, and if you feed the picture back into the camera, you'll return to the moment in time when the picture was taken. Yup, Takopi is in fact a time loop story, resolving to learn more about what she did and why, and more importantly, how to prevent it from happening again, vowing to fix what he views as his own mistake. Takopi inserts the photo and travels back in time. Awesome! Okay, so Takopi's Original Sin is a time loop story. Now, time travel as a whole is a genre that I honestly cannot abide. And yet, some of my absolute favorite manga of all time are time loop stories. And you're probably asking yourself which one, and if you've watched my channel for any length of time, it should be obvious. But yeah, fans of manga will probably be aware that the time loop is an astonishingly common narrative device in Japanese media. But why? Well, To understand this, we need to go back in time. Aha, see what I did there? Sorry. But yeah, all the way back to the 1960s. And some of you might know what I'm talking about. See, 60s Japan was its own thing. We will talk extensively about this if and when we get around to the Silent Hill F-series, but it is an amazingly interesting period of time. Massive societal upheaval, an enormous culture clash going on in Japan, and a booming economy. Just a lot of fascinating societal forces in play. It was also an era with a lot of creativity, and in 1965, a small serial was published in a minor teen magazine, and it proved so popular that it was published in novel form 2 years later, Green Mile style. You may not have heard of it. The story is titled The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and if this does sound familiar, you may be more familiar with the 2006 anime film, which as far as I understand it is more of a pseudo-sequel to the original. In essence, a middle schooler by the name of Kazuo develops the ability to travel back in time while retaining her memories. The actual story is, yeah, it's not really my thing. The concept is cool, but the final explanation for why it's happening is so dumb, and the romance that forms the core of the plot is frankly kind of arch. Oh right, and the ending. While yes, it is sad as all hell, it's kind of predictable, but this proved amazingly popular. And it spawned a live-action adaptation in the 80s and several after, multiple television series, the aforementioned anime film, and even, bizarrely enough, a hit song. It also allegedly inspired a bunch of films outside of Japan, including, at least stochastically, Groundhog Day. But again, it's the Violence Jack Mad Max thing, so extra strength allegedly over all of that. That said, it is a super duper common trope in anime and manga, including stuff like Steins Gate. Would anyone want to see me cover Steins Gate at some point? Let me know. As well as my beloved Higurashi. And it generally features a story where a character or characters endlessly repeat a period of time or a sequence of events in order to achieve a better outcome. Sometimes to solve a mystery, but most often it's just to escape the loop. As they do so, they generally gain a deeper understanding of themselves, their friends, and finally, why these events occurred. Again, I'm not a fan of time travel in media in general. It tends to create extended storylines that wind up having no stakes at all, but time loops, I love. Anyways, back in the past, present, you know, whatever. We get a pretty sad little sequence as Takopi, naturally not willing to let Shizuka in on what will happen to her, and in an attempt to work out what would cause her to become a Muppet, yes, bringing out all the euphemisms here, asks her to take him to school with her. He uses another gadget to turn him essentially invisible. All people will see is a flower in Shizuka's hair, and oh right, this is bloody interesting. Short tangent, I promise. Because see, flowers in Japan carry a lot of significance. Something else that we will go hardcore into when and if we get around to that Silent Hill F deep dive. But here, her flower is a dokudami, or chameleon flower, and oh, this one's really clever. See, a dokudami, where do I even start? For starters, it's an alien species, so I see what you did there. It's often confused for a tsubaki or camellia, a flower often representing struggle, perseverance in the face of persecution, but also an imminent, unavoidable death. And finally, for the longest time, and it's where its name comes from, the dokudami was believed to confer a resistance to poison, but it's actually poisonous in and of itself, which, yeah, again, lots of significance to the story. At school, we quickly see that, yeah, as mentioned, she is firmly the class Jonah, and her teacher doesn't seem especially interested in helping her. Her possessions and school supplies are always getting taken or destroyed, her desk graffitoed, which, yeah, definitely demarcates this as a work of fiction, because even in that era, this would not happen without someone getting punished. probably her, because this would count as defacing school property, a really big problem. Can I get an "Oh Japan" for the audience? We also see her bully smirking at her, and one of the reasons why she's been getting away with it is revealed. She's the class president, a very important and prestigious role in Japan. Takopi goes undercover, essentially, so that he can observe. What follows is a sequence that is definitely riffing on this setup in other kids' mangas, as Takopi, misinterpreting things, uses his gadgets to short-circuit the bullying efforts in a relatively funny way. But I do love how a lot of this is drawn like it's being filmed through a fisheye lens. This always suggests that things are distorted and just not quite right in this world. But yeah, for instance, Marina always humiliates Shizuka by hiding her workbook, this time resulting in her not being able to answer a math question assigned as homework. And then, because Marina is legitimately devious, ratting her out, lying and telling the teacher that Shizuka forgot it at home, getting Shizuka a scolding, so Takopi goes back in time and tells Shizuka the answer, and presumably gives her Marina's workbook. And the day goes on much in this vein. Well-intentioned hijinks that would play out very differently in another manga, and are indeed quite cute, sure, but as we're dealing with a world that is a reasonable facsimile of ours, this is going to make things way worse. Now again, this will make sense once I give my theory at the end as to exactly what this manga is riffing on. But again, think kids show. As likely after a day of basically being punked by Takopi and thinking it's Shizuka, Marina has told her that she wants to talk with her later, which we all know is code for "you're gonna get jumped." But Takopi, in the logic of kids shows, says that yeah, sure, clearly they just need to talk things out and that'll fix everything. Again, the author is laying out her thesis here, and it's rather well done. However, seeing as Shizuka is terrified, he uses another gadget to take her form so that he can go in her place. Yes, let's call this Chekhov's shapeshifting and leave it at that for now. Sure enough, Marina brutally beats him and stabs him repeatedly with a pen in a really mean little sequence. And our little alien is left battered, bruised, and utterly terrified. Clearly, he misread this situation completely. However, we do get one possible lead on the issue at play here, and it has something to do with Shizuka's mother being a hostess. Takopi tries a few things, including getting the teacher involved, but naturally it doesn't work, and the situation essentially stalemates. Any measure he tries either makes things worse or does nothing, but he is always confident that, in the next loop, he will find an answer. One afternoon, as they're leaving school, they run into a friendly boy that we've actually seen lurking around the edges of the story, Naoki. He's a familiar character if you're familiar with the sort of show or manga, let's say slightly clueless love interest, but obviously platonic, because these characters are kids and it's not that sort of manga, fortunately. He offers to bring the matter up at the next school council meeting, but she declines. I actually don't know why they don't go through with this. That might actually work, as that would almost certainly get back to the PTA, who would pressure the school to do something about the bullying, most likely separating the two students. Roads not traveled. But we later get some more information on all of this. After Shizuka's father left, and after her mother took up working as a hostess to make ends meet, in walked Marina's father, probably as a client, who fell head over heels for the hostess and became one of her regulars. Now, there are some fan theories out there that they were seeing each other before, and this is why Mr. Kuze left, but I don't think so. Regardless, since that day, Marina has tormented her endlessly. She does, however, say something that gives him hope. Since she met Takopi, it feels like her life has gotten a tiny bit better. Aww. But then how did we get from this to Kermiting, the dog. The dog has to be the key. We cut over to see Marina return home and find, oh dears, her mother in a trashed kitchen, drunk as a skunk and clearly unstable. Her father has left to see Shizuka's mother, giving her a bollocking in the process. Man, the art in this thing is really good in places, isn't it? What a haunting panel. Now, I am going to spoil a few things here, as the way this narrative is delivered is both, it's a little messy, and it's done via several panels that there is no way I can show you. But in short, yeah, all of this resulted in Marina's father becoming emotionally abusive towards Marina's mother, who is physically and emotionally abusive towards her daughter in turn. Make sense? It's like a human centipede of trauma. Humans, huh? Back over that night, which we will learn soon, is the first time they've gotten this far in a loop again, as this is the night that Chappie went missing previously, and the next day, Shizuka Kermited. Takopi, likely hoping he can prevent whatever happened, tags along with Shizuka, and we get conclusive confirmation that her father left when she was quite young, divorcing her mother, but unfortunately not young enough for Shizuka to forget. In essence, Chappie is, in many respects, a substitute for her father, and is also sort of the last way for them to remain connected, at least in her mind, likely subconsciously. But we do indeed see what happened, and it's quite simple if undeniably awful. Marina showed up and started bullying Shizuka. After the situation became physical, Chappie responded by biting Marina. Marina then ran up and told the nearest adults that a dangerous dog attacked her. Animal control showed up and took the dog away. Now, I am not going to go too far into this, as I know it's quite a hard subject for some of you, but Japanese animal control and the euthanasia of aggressive or unwanted pets is a very complicated topic, made even more complicated by the unreliable, vague, or even contradictory data on this, with one report saying that it barely happens, and another having it being fairly common, and the methods of euthanasia varying between relatively quick and incredibly cruel. However, at a balance, it seems that, while this used to be a big issue, most larger cities have at least taken some steps to move away from putting these animals down towards, well, so generally, if a dog bites someone in Japan, animal control will confiscate the animal. They will then evaluate the home life and the danger level of the animal, and very occasionally return it, but more likely will ask someone else to take the animal in, generally after some sort of rehabilitation. However, the catch is, because Japan, it has to be someone outside of that municipality, with the solution, as always, to be move the problem somewhere else so it's not our problem anymore. And yes, if nobody can be found to take the animal in, then it generally is put down. Shizuka, on the other hand, doesn't know much about this, and that's bad, as we will learn in greater detail soon. So this is the inciting incident that, if it occurs, is going to set in motion a chain of events that will lead her to Kermiting. In response, Takopi once again uses the camera to restart the loop. He now knows that while he can to some degree mitigate the bullying at school, it's not effective. All that'll happen is that it will get worse later. This, the business with the dog, this is what he has to fix. Shizuka loves her dog. It's one of the few things that makes her smile. So Chappie being confiscated, that has to be why. But yeah, we've now established our time loop structure, at least for now, and again, I am going to extrapolate some of this from clues and context. On day 1, Takopi meets Shizuka. Days 2 through 5 involve them getting to know each other, him seeing what her situation is like, and presumably trying to change things unsuccessfully. On day 6, Marina attacks Shizuka. The dog in turn bites Marina and is taken away by animal control. On day 7, Shizuka Kermits. I'm not sure if this is specified anywhere, but I'm going to infer that day 6 is a Sunday, as Shizuka committed on a school day, as again we will learn later. Takopi tries a wide variety of stuff to fix this. They walk a different path? Nope, Marina shows up anyway. They go at a different time of day? Nope. There she is. A different day? Nope. It just postpones the inevitable. Loop after loop after loop after loop go by, all ending the same. He can delay things just a little bit, but eventually Marina attacks Shizuka, Chappie bites Marina, Chappie is confiscated, Shizuka dies. Something doesn't add up here. Is this fate? Predestiny? Why is she always there? However, on loop 25, Takopi, sneaking around, overhears something and gets his answer. The reason this keeps happening isn't fate or destiny. Not really. It's because Marina is frigging tracking them. Oh, fuck. This entire thing with the dog, Marina is actively orchestrating it. And then, the day after, something happens that takes Shizuka all the way down. So what do you do now? And why? Yeah, Marina blames Shizuka's mother for her own family imploding and is taking it out on a proxy. Got it. But there's bullying, and then there's acting like a complete psychopath. Why is Marina taking it this far? Answers, as things stand, are not forthcoming, and it is all Takopi can do to push forward. This next bit is yeesh. We see Takopi vowing to fix this, but what in the utter hell is the little alien going to do? We see what happens a bit further into this chain of events, and it only raises more questions. Shizuka's mother is furious, but does take her to visit animal control. Now, due to... Okay, so this is a fairly complex little nuance of the culture, so I'm going to try to explain it here. Japan is a country where business relationships are taken very seriously. And when something bad happens, blame attaches to everyone connected. The usual response is one of three things. Option A is to diffuse responsibility amongst everyone so that it attaches to no one. Option B is to find a single scapegoat and put all of the responsibility onto them. And option C, a variation on option B, is to move said scapegoat as far away as possible. The goal is essentially to visit the land of this never happened. For example, we had an incident at school where a teacher got into a minor fender bender, even though the other driver was uninjured and her car received only the most superficial damage, as she was the parent of a student and, more importantly, a PTA higher-up. The school apologized profusely to her, and all the teachers were punished by cancelling all work parties and staff events for the rest of the year. More significantly, that teacher was forced by the school to pay that parent off out of pocket. Basically, whatever she asked as compensation, and if it had been a private school or a business, he'd have been sacked. As it was, he still got transferred to frigging Ibaraki, if I recall, all to avoid offending that mother. I had a personal experience that was even worse. I'll talk more about this if I ever do My Hero Academia in any capacity, as the character of Twice is basically this personified. Regardless, and again, I'm inferring here a bit. Animal Control said that the bite was minor, but the dog needed to be removed from the city for a time, and will have to go and stay with her father, who has very kindly agreed to take the animal in. Shizuka's mother is very cross, as Marina is the daughter of a client, her father, remember? So she doesn't fight Animal Control and instead blames Shizuka. But then, wait a second. It's sad and all, and brutally unfair, but the dog isn't gone forever, and Shizuka knows where he'll be and is free to visit him in... Okay, so we will later learn that her dad lives in Tokyo, so quite a trek from Hokkaido. But still, how do we get from this to, well, the Muppet Show? Was this just the last straw? You can probably see a pattern emerging. Takopi wants to help, but it's all very ad hoc. He sees what he thinks the problem is, uses his camera to rewind time, tries to fix the problem through brute force, but the issue is that there are more events further down the loop that then ambush him. Once again, he's putting a band-aid on cancer. Anyways, we see another of the many problems here. Shizuka's mother is pretty much checked out, not bothering to calm or comfort her daughter. Instead, she scolds her and then leaves for work, only remarking on the dokudami, lady, you also suck. Basically everyone in this story does in some capacity. The next day, we see another part of the problem. Marina constantly just hammers Shizuka about the dog, gloating that it was taken away, and the class naturally sides with Marina, who paints the entire thing as a deliberate attack set in motion by Shizuka sicking Kujo on her. So yeah, we are now closing in on Muppet time. Something must happen today, right after school, and sure enough, as school ends, Marina follows Shizuka and Takopi with a, oh, that's not a good expression at all. Takopi naturally misreads the situation and, seeing a grinning Marina following them, believes that this will be a chance to help the pair reconcile at last. Because smiling is good and means happy, right? And here, at last, we finally get a massive piece of the puzzle and an explanation as to why Marina is doing all of this. I will give you a minor spoiler. It's only implied here, but it's actively spelled out later, so I'm going to go ahead and explain. We get a short vignette showing what's been happening to Marina at home. Her mother and father had taken to massive screaming arguments in front of her, with her father being the prime culprit, just berating her mother for any little thing he can think of, with her mother absolutely miserable due to him constantly visiting Shizuka's mother as well as mistreating her, and this occurs entirely in front of their daughter. Eventually, Mrs. Kirarazaka began to break down psychologically and, blaming Shizuka's mother for all of this, manipulated the vulnerable and traumatized Marina into a nasty plan for revenge. She agreed to this, not because she blames Shizuka necessarily, but because her mother wanted to hurt Mrs. Kuze through her daughter, and in order to gain some affection and love from her dysfunctional hot and cold mother, Marina set this plan into action. Again, we see that this is an interlocking chain of traumatized, broken people manipulating, abusing, and screwing with each other, just passing utter hell down the chain. Holy shit, that's bleak. And yeah, while this manga is not especially bloody or shocking, okay, that double spread accepted, I think there's a reason why so many people consider this manga extremely dark. And part of it is, well, just this inescapable sense that no, it's not all going to be okay, not at all. And yeah, the last manga that did that to me is Higurashi, and by manga I mean manga that I actually enjoyed reading. I'm not counting miserableism like Brad Hurley's Coach. Marina leads Shizuka into an isolated patch of woods, and okay, this is another sequence that I can't really show you much of. It's not especially graphic, but it's grim as hell, and I suspect that I'm going to have monetization issues anyway here. She proceeds to beat the living hell out of Shizuka, all while telling her that animal control actually put the dog down, and also outright spelling out her vendetta, escalated because her father has given Shizuka's mother Mrs. Kirarazaka's wedding ring as a gift. Dude, and as a terrified Takopi watches, stomps on her and tells her over and over again to curb it. And yep, this is it, the final straw on a very tired and already broken camel. After this, Shizuka goes home and joins the Muppet Show. Takopi realizes that now is the time. If he wants to save his charge, he has to act, but finds that he's too frightened to move. And finally, unable to take it anymore, he snaps. He summons all of his courage and does the only thing that comes to mind in the moment. Takopi leaps out of hiding and bonks the astonished Marina with the happy camera in a huge double spread that, had it not been for the distressed and badly beaten Shizuka, would actually be really funny. I mean, they've got the comic strip stars and everything. Seriously, it's like something out of the Beano. Marina goes down like a sack of bricks. Shocked at his own actions, Takopi tries to rouse the stunned Marina, all while remonstrating with himself. He's a Happian. He is here to spread joy and smiles, not bash people over the bonds. And yet, the only thing he could think of in the moment was to intervene physically. Then he realizes that something is very wrong here. Marina is lying flat on her back, blood flowing freely from her head. Her eyes are wide open, staring unblinking at nothing. Takopi's blow didn't just knock Marina down, it caved in her skull. Marina is dead. Frozen in horror, Takopi tries to use the camera to rewind the loop, only no. The force of the blow broke it. He begins to panic. The happy little alien has just straight up killed someone. What the hell does he do now? Then, to his horror, Shizuka approaches and he braces himself for what'll come next. Only she smiles at him beautifully and thanks him. Taking his hand, she tells him that this fixes everything. Surprised but overjoyed, Takopi resolves that this loop will be the real one, and the next page shows them walking away, hand in hand, as the title of the manga is revealed. All of that, it was sort of a prologue, albeit a prologue to the utter darkness and horror to come. But you know what? Now that we've seen the title, and well, the sin itself, sort of, you'll see later, but I think it's time for another tangent. And as always, those of you who don't like the tangents, bookmarks are there for a reason. Let's do this. Alright, we are not going to go into the history of Christianity in Japan. All that you need to know is that a lot of it is Catholic. The term original sin is one of those that almost everyone has heard, but very few people really understand, and thus it's often perverted or misapplied, along with phrases like the personal is political, holy crap polar, does that one grate my cheese, or worse yet, the term squatters' rights. In short, original sin is a theological term, specifically from Christianity, although most of the Abrahamic faiths have some version of it. It holds that all human beings, no matter how good or innocent they are or aspire to be, are nonetheless born into an impure, sinful nature, inherited from Adam and Eve after they fell from grace and were ejected from the Garden of Eden. This is a nature that cannot really be overcome, and it is only through divine intervention and salvation that we can be spared from damnation. And in some sects, even salvation is not available to people who aren't born into it or predestined to it, although these sects and beliefs have mostly fallen out of fashion, likely due to the cognitive dissonance invoked by the concept of an all-loving God who would nonetheless create people, bringing them into being only for them to be damned no matter what they do. Now, what makes this genuinely fascinating is that it's dogma, not scripture, as it's based on speculation and frankly out of context interpretation of its mostly 3 specific verses from different parts of the Bible, 2 from the Old Testament and 1 from the New by... Now we're not going to go into all of the various denominations, schisms, and internecine wars waged over this frigging concept, but in short, it dates back to the 400s and is especially common to Catholicism, Calvinism, and Lutheranism, mostly developed as a way to browbeat the then nascent Gnostic movement. Gnostic? I don't know. And scare people leaving the church back in a struggle between the organized religions of the era era where an understanding of God is done via listening to and obeying the church, and personal religion, where an understanding is developed by exploration, experience, gaining knowledge, and, well, living your life. As a fun aside, the Gnostic movement mostly flourished in the Mediterranean world due to the amount of travel and trade, while the more autocratic church of the era flourished primarily in continental Europe. Although Gnosticism did eventually turn into a bunch of mystical wibbly-woo and suffocated to death on its own Solomon key-centered Dionysian farts. Original Sin essentially holds that humans have no free will except to sin. Thus, even if we attempt to do good without grace, all we can do is create evil, and the harder we try, the more likely our attempts to do good are to result in greater evils. This will naturally have a lot of bearing on the story as we go. Now, what is interesting about Original Sin is that some of the Apocrypha, basically the books that didn't make it into the Bible, some of which are so bloody interesting and useful that even some parts of the church have softened on these, and rather than declaring them heretical, actually recommend reading them, particularly the books of Ezra, Baruch, and the Wisdom of Solomon, although a lot of the other Apocrypha are completely bloody insane. And these books outright contradict the concept of original sin, holding that it is up to each person to sin or not sin, and that it is through our own choices that we do good or evil. Fortunately, the belief in original sin, and especially the belief in, well, predestined damnation, at least in Christianity, haven't stuck around too much. And even back then, they were mostly a way of keeping some guilt and fear handy as a big spiky stick to hit backsliders with. In modern times, outside of some of the more conservative sects of Christianity, the church as a whole does not adhere quite so, I cannot believe I wrote this, religiously to the concept. Viewing these verses, but particularly the one by Paul, I swear nearly every beef I have with the New Testament comes from Paul, who was definitely getting a bit salty in his old years. We'll talk more about that one day if the chance arises. It's really interesting, as being allegorical or descriptive more so than prescriptive, ditto the Old Testament verses. The church nowadays, at least mostly, isn't quite so rigid on the matter, emphasizing personal choice and right acting more than slavish adherence to church authority and ritual. And this does line up more with the teachings of the New Testament, again a few later verses by Paul notwithstanding. So yes, there we go. The Owl's primer to the history of Christianity and the concept of original sin. What a weird tangent.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello all, this is Mrs. Owl, aka the other owl, aka the random snarky text interjections in Mr. Owl's videos. I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm offering a variety of my services at a very affordable price.
Phrasing?
Yeah, okay. But you know what I mean. And he better not have inserted that Archer clip over that. Womp womp. So for starters, my art commissions are still open. I can do everything from pixel art to animations to actual art. And if you want some examples of what I can do, I designed Mr. Owl's avatar, his intro, and all of his good thumbnails. Shh, don't tell him I sent that. But if you want some fan art, an OC, an avatar, video thumbnails, an animation, or maybe a portrait or something for that important someone, whatever you want made, I'm sure we can figure something out. Now, to those of you aspiring authors, and there seem to be a good few of you on the Discord right now, I also have extensive experience proofreading and editing at a professional level, and I even design book covers. So whether it's a short story, a manga, a comic, or even academic essays or dissertations, I'm here to fix it up, polish it, and make sure it all works. And for those of you who've finished a book or graphic novel and are looking to get it read, we're offering a very special, all-inclusive editing and book cover package, and just to sweeten the deal, this will include a proper ad spot in one of Mr. Owl's videos. If you're interested, I'd snap that one up as soon as possible. So that's my side of things. If you're interested or want a quote or further information, hit me up at my business email or coffee, all links in the description. Much appreciated, and now we return to our regularly scheduled owl.
As Takopi and Shizuka prepare to leave, they are frozen by a yell. Oh bugger, it's Naoki, that noble young man we met previously. Because he's a really good sort. He followed Marina and Shizuka, presumably just to make sure that things didn't go too far. But by the time he caught up, well, things had gone too far. Just ask little Mr. Manslaughter over there. It takes him a second, and then, as he takes in the scene, he goggles at what's going on. Takopi, no longer disguised as a flower, who immediately starts talking, but more importantly, Marina's bloody corpse. Shizuka immediately gives the game away, saying that Takopi did it with his magic. Oh boy. And Takopi seems nonchalant and chipper. Remember, he is learning from Shizuka here, and to her, what he did wasn't just okay, it was admirable. Naoki, however, is staggered. He tells the little alien to shut the hell up. This isn't the time to be cheerful. Whatever Marina had done or was going to do, there had to be another way. And yeah, I'm not going near that topic. But he goes on to say that murder is murder, whatever the reasons, and that Shizuka will likely be sent to juvie. We're not going into this too much here as A, I've already discussed this topic extensively in other videos, especially Higurashi if I recall, and B, we just did a long tangent, but in short, this might be a nod to several incidents in Japan, where young students murdered other students, but particularly the case of Girl A, an 11-year-old who brutally killed another student with a utility knife, then happily confessed to the murder. The only motive supplied for the crime was that this girl had allegedly called her fat and a goody-goody on a message board. Girl A spent 2 years in a reformatory, which I suspect they translated as juvie, but was retained for another 2 years due to her having severe mental issues. Then, as is the way in Japan, she was released, and because it was the frigging Channers, if I recall, had somehow sleuthed out her real name, so she was given a new identity. Out of interest, while a lot of debate revolved around what led up to this, with the usual suspects of her liking violent manga and video games being raised, it was eventually blamed on her being on the spectrum, leading to further stigma and concern about special needs or autistic students in schools being a danger to other students, something that unfortunately endures today, and again, we discussed this at length in Higurashi. Girl A, along with similar cases with similar outcomes, resulted in a lot of discourse around Japan's perceived incredibly lax treatment of young offenders, even where they are murderers or, as was seen in the Boy A case from the 90s, actual serial killers. Reformatories are, from what I've seen, actually pretty cushy. More like summer camps than labor camps, heavily focused on rehabilitation and treatment. So frankly, Shizuka might be better off there. But no, to her, this would mean that she can't go and see her dog, and instead, she begs Naoki for help, saying that as he's always reading, maybe he can think of a way out. Because, how would I put this? He's one of those, unfortunately not very smart people, but more likely because he has a massive crush on Shizuka, he agrees once she holds his hand. Oh dear. So yeah, there is this thing about victims of abuse that we will get into later. If you know, you know, and we'll also have spotted just how good the writing in this manga is. But we also get a brief aside, showing us that Naoki also has family problems. We'll learn more about these later, and these generally involve his parents comparing him to his big brother. Naoki thus comes up with a plan, Using Takopi's gadgets, they are going to attempt to cover the murder up completely. Part 1 of the plan is brilliant. Takopi has a device called a memory box. It preserves whatever you put into it, and can also be expanded and shrunk at will. So, as far as I understand it, and I may be kind of off here, their plan is to put Marina's corpse in the box, shrink it down, and for Takopi to keep it on him. Although for some unknown reason they decide to shrink it down and bury it here. But okay, so far so good. Part 2, however. Part 2 is just, yeah, these are kids, but even as a kid, this would have struck me as stupid. Shizuka tells Takopi that, using another gadget, the transformation one we saw earlier, remember? That, to allay suspicions, he will need to assume Marina's appearance and not only pretend to be her, but to take her place permanently. I have no idea why, considering that anyone else would just assume that the troubled girl had run away. I guess they don't know this, so sure. Kids, right? They're kids. Takopi is not comfortable with this, and Naoki seems skeptical as hell, especially as Takopi keeps saying P. But after Shizuka smiles at him again, he happily agrees. What could possibly go wrong? What I guess you'd refer to as Act 2 kicks off, with us joining Takopi at Marina's house. And, much as always, he completely misreads the situation. Seeing her parents constantly arguing and screaming at each other, her father being the primary issue, he interprets this as them getting along just fine and, even in Marina's body, being his usual aggressively cheerful self, not knowing that Marina at home was nervous, and in constant distress. Back over with the kids, we see the next stage in their plan. While Shizuka naturally wants to travel to Tokyo to visit Chappie and her dad immediately, Naoki says that A, it's way too frigging soon. They need to wait a bit longer for the dust to settle around the, murder, and B, they will need to figure out the logistics of the trip, as 3, or I assume 2 young kids making their way to and through Tokyo alone would raise eyebrows to say the least. Shizuka is unimpressed, but grudgingly assents, and they agree to have daily meetings to share information and puzzle all of this out. They're interrupted by the narratively convenient arrival of Naoki's big brother, an absurdly handsome, I'll guess late high schooler named Junior. Shouldn't it be senior? Oh, come on, that was a good one. Fine. We quickly see part of the problem that Naoki is facing at home. Now, we'll learn more about this later, but for now, we learn that Junior works part-time and recently bought his mother a gift, a ring, that he plans to give to her, and no, don't read too much into that. For some reason, Naoki resents him and really hates that he works part-time, wanting him instead to come home after school to study. Okay. Shizuka tells him to just steal the ring, and when Naoki expresses reservations at becoming a thief, she charms him again, and the smitten Naoki agrees to this terrible idea. Now, this is what I was alluding to a little bit back. Those of you who are familiar with this kind of psychology will know that not all victims of abuse are saints, or even especially nice. And there's a tendency amongst those who have been abused to learn how to play the angles and manipulate others. It's a survival strategy. The problem is that after the abuse ceases, or they are simply elsewhere, this will frequently turn into them replicating the abuse they suffered onto others. And yeah, Shizuka, you're starting to worry me. This all goes on for a while, and we finally learn a bit more about Naoki's situation and why he is the way he is. We see that he comes from an extremely wealthy family, cardiologists, and also why he resents his brother so much. His mother is, surprise surprise, the problem. She is extremely emotionally abusive, in an unfortunately very Japanese way, constantly comparing him to his brother, a super genius with a perfect eidetic memory, ignoring now his own substantial and impressive personal achievements, and instead just taunting him and calling him useless, treating him as a whole with a lot of cruelty. For instance, she prepares delicious-looking food but withholds it because now he only got 99% on a test. Criminy. We also see that this has given him a massive inferiority complex, which is what is making it easy for Shizuka to manipulate him. Now, he does steal the ring in an extended but frankly pointless sequence, mostly presumably giving a tonal break to the story, with some Takopi gadget hijinks, including the flappy wings kind of sucking, and we see a short time skip to the outside world. It appears that Marina has now done a complete 180 and befriending Shizuka, causing a lot of people to goggle at them. They continue to plan their trip to Tokyo, and from the outside it all looks really wholesome. Enemies have become friends, and everyone looks happy, belying the true darkness under the surface. Time passes, and yes, it does look like, in some fashion, the trio are becoming some semblance of friends and achieving something that might pass as contentment, if not true happiness. However, we cut over to the forest, where Marina and Shizuka had their final fatal showdown, as we see that something has gone terribly wrong. The buried memory box has malfunctioned. It has returned to its true size and worked its way to the surface. From inside, Marina's bloody corpse stares up with sightless eyes. Oh dears. Sometime later, we see the trio finalizing their plans for Tokyo, and we get two interesting bits of foreshadowing. Now he asks Takopi why the happy and gadgets suck so much. Which, yeah, they're frigging insanely powerful, but also really unreliable and janky. Kind of like modern Intel CPUs, deep nerd cut there. Takopi responds defensively, saying that yeah, but there are way more powerful gadgets on his home planet, including the Big Happy Clock, which is essentially a souped-up version of his camera, giving nearly omnipotent abilities in terms of time control. I've already made a Chekhov's gadget joke, so I will leave it alone, but yeah, need I say, remember it for later. He also says something really interesting, where now he asks why he doesn't just go back to his home planet and get this crazy overpowered gizmo. Takopi says that he can never return. Wait, but wasn't he sent to Earth Kal-El style to spread happiness? As Shizuka and Naoki play, he ponders this. Why can't he return home? And more importantly, why can't he remember? And what follows is honestly one of the best sequences in a manga full of bloody good sequences. Just watch, or I guess listen. It starts as we follow Marina, Takopi, Marinapi? Oh bugger it, we'll just go with Takopi for now. Back to the Kirarazaka residence, as the husband and wife continue fighting, with him once again being a massive bellend, and his wife at last breaking down. Takopi continues to muse on the previous question as they yell back and forth. As is sadly common in divorcing couples, the father then begins to attempt to get his daughter to come and live with him in Tokyo. Now, this is an odd thing to consider, but I'm going to assume that Mr. Kirarazaka is not moving to Tokyo because of the divorce, considering that he seems to be obsessed with Mrs. Kuze and they're still in Hokkaido. What's more likely is that he has a second apartment set up where he stays due to work, likely one held by his employer, meaning that he's probably quite wealthy, and we will get confirmation of this later. This immediately makes Takopi sit up and take notice. Their goal, overall, is to get Shizuka to Tokyo in order for her to visit Chappie. Could this represent some roundabout way to achieve that? Naturally, not being able to read the room, Takopi agrees enthusiastically, oh dear, while Mrs. Kirarazaka looks on in miserable, helpless fury. To her, it seems that her husband is about to deliver a coup to leave her with nothing and to take her daughter along for the ride. The next day though, Takopi's told that he won't be home that night. So yeah, the guy doesn't really care where his daughter lives. He's just doing this to spite his wife. And once he is gone, we get an absolutely heart-wrenching confrontation between him and Mrs. Kirarazaka. She tells Takopi that she knows something is off here. Marina does not talk like this and doesn't act like this. She isn't a smiling, cheerful child at all. When Takopi doesn't stop, the psychologically imploding woman, oh boy, I can't show this, can I? Snaps and hits her hard in the face with the AC remote, telling her to knock it off. Takopi doesn't, and so gets hit again, drawing blood. He tries to apologize, but this only makes things worse, and she prepares to hit again before slumping to the floor, sobbing and begging for her daughter to come back. Clearly, Takopi hasn't been fooling anyone. Oh, hell. Mrs. Kirarazaka continues, pleading with Takopi to return her daughter, apologizing for being an awful mother, and just asking her to come back. Boy, this stuff hits hard as a dad. Bloody hell, man. But seriously, lady, you abused your daughter, then manipulated her into bullying another student with the express desire of, well, getting her to join the Muppet Show in order to get back at her mother for something that was honestly your asshole husband's fault more than anyone else's. While yes, I do feel bad for you, it's hard for me to tell why. Takopi looks around the room, seeing that all the photographs on the shelves follow a certain theme, and he comes to a terrible realization. Whatever problems they may have, these people adore their daughter. Every single photograph is of her, and now she's dead because of him. We get a just, again, when I said this was a good sequence, holy shit, just look at this page. We see Takopi using the photographs as a sort of cipher, constructing a timeline of the Kirarazaka's home life, all with him sort of standing off to one side in his people suit. From the time she was a baby up until now, they doted on her, and even her deeply troubled mother and bastard of a father bear her no ill will. Whatever Marina was, her mother and her father loved her deeply. And while he can play make-believe and dress up all he wants, the reality of the situation is that he has killed Marina and nothing can bring her back. All he's doing is making things worse. Up in the dead girl's room, Takopi looks into the mirror, then sinks to the floor in abject remorse, deeply sorry for what he's done, and begins to sob. Jeez, but what went wrong? He was serving his purpose. He was trying to help Shizuka to be happy. Marina was doing her best to destroy her life. But this outcome is, in its own way, just as bad. A different girl is dead. A girl who had, whatever their problems, despite their disintegrating marriage, two parents who loved her. And yeah, I think this is showing us that whatever terrible lessons Takopi has learned from this planet, his nature is still good. He needs to speak with Shizuka again and figure out what to do to fix this. However, elsewhere, we see a team of geologists doing some kind of survey within the forest. In an unbelievably bad bounce, stumble onto the memory box, and inside, they indeed find Marina's corpse. The outside world is about to find out that she is dead, and the noose is beginning to tighten. Before the next chapter begins, we get another heartbreaking image. This one is sort of alternate cover, with a sobbing Marina instead holding the thread. The next day, we see the police visit their class, telling them that Marina was found dead and asking anyone with any information to please come forward. Naturally, this makes Naoki start sweating bullets. Careful, dude. This is very clearly ye old smokeout. They're watching the class to see if anyone looks like they're going to be wearing brown pants, and you look like you just hang glided over hell. Now, there is one thing that occurs to me that... Is this a plot hole? Or considering that I was writing this while in the grips of some unspeakable bioweapon of a virus baby owl brought home, maybe I'm just dumb. See if you can spot it before we get there. After school, they head into the forest, presumably to... No, wait. I have no bloody idea what they're doing in there. Get out of there, you little idiots. You're gonna get rumbled. But yeah, Naoki, looking at something on his phone, suddenly starts tweaking right the hell out, screaming at Takopi to transform back. But wait, as we've established, Takopi has been impersonating Marina, right? But in class that day, he was himself, albeit disguised as the flower again. But why? Why wasn't he Marina? The confrontation with Marina's mother? I don't know. It's a bloody good thing. But you know what? I'm not going to poke holes, and I'm going to assume the bit in the forest occurred earlier, which is why he was a flower again. This probably makes more sense chronologically in the anime. I don't know. But yeah, I love this manga, and believe it or not, it starts getting even more interesting here. Takopi, meanwhile, is having a crisis of conscience, and we're starting to do that thing. You know, that thing, where a group of friends who've killed someone gradually start turning on each other. Here, Naoki is terrified, but due to his feelings for Shizuka and her manipulation, he's now in too deep. There is no way out but through. Takopi is reasonably good-hearted, despite being blisteringly stupid and a cephalopod out of water. And Shizuka? Who the hell knows right now? Regardless, while Naoki tells them that this was a bad bounce, it may be okay regardless. Due to the memory box and their games with Takopi taking Marina's place, it's unlikely that they'll be able to determine an accurate time of death, and they did destroy or wipe out everything possible to remove anything that could connect them to the murder. Takopi, however, is preoccupied, thinking of Marina's parents, and asks them if what they're doing is right, but they shout him down. We get a protracted sequence showing basically what I just said. Naoki is scared, Takopi is guilty, Shizuka is as cool as a cucumber because, well, all she cares about is getting to Tokyo and seeing Chappie. I do like the little glimpse we get into her house though. Holy crap, that's foul. Her mother's mental state is clearly declining. Cause seriously, I can smell that from here. Naoki, meanwhile, is really struggling at home. Initially, it seemed like things were looking up, as his mother finally seemed willing to give him the pancakes she'd made, rather than using these to punish him for not being absolutely perfect. Especially as we learn that, due to him being sick with fear over the Marina situation, and presumably his own mother's abuse, his academics have really suffered. But no, his mother is in fact eminently shitty, as she tells him that, well, he can have his bloody pancakes because she's just given up on him. She's not gonna try, he can do whatever the hell he wants, have a nice life. Holy shit, lady. Is that magic camera still around somewhere? Because you're asking for a whack. Utterly broken. Naoki goes for a walk and a cry, and he hears a voice. It's Shizuka checking up on him. Aw, that's nice. She says that the police keep calling and want to interview her at the station, which even in Japan is pretty innocuous, but she's worried. Regardless, her coming to comfort her friend is perhaps a sign that her own head is finally getting screwed on right. The police have told her not to go anywhere, and that they will want to speak with her extensively over the summer vacation, which that is minor cause for concern. But she needs to go and see Chappie then, so she needs Naoki to help her out. Okay, and sure, he eagerly agrees. Then she gives him the blood-stained camera and tells him to turn himself in and confess to the murder for her. Oh, crap, man. Shizuka has become a full-on sociopath. We get a brief interlude showing more of Naoki's backstory. Now, I've talked about this in other videos, but a quick reminder. Japan, while it does have a lot to recommend it, does have some serious issues, and one of the biggest, at least to me, is the way the education system works over there. In a nutshell, if you want to, say, be a doctor in the USA, you need to work hard in high school, get into a decent university, work hard there, and then if you're bright enough and perform well enough, you can probably get into med school, he says with absolute knowledge, gained mostly via osmosis. My point is that, provided you work hard and do well and pretty much work yourself to death in high school and university, I guess, it's doable. To be a doctor in Japan? Well, you needed to have decided to become a doctor pretty much by the end of elementary school, which would allow you to get into a decent middle school, do a lot of outside tutoring, as well as being, pretty damn intelligent in your own right. Then you would need to outcompete everyone else in the entrance exams and interviews, allowing you to test into one of a handful of extremely specific high schools, which will in turn allow you entry to one of a handful of specific universities, and then it's easy, because university in Japan is mostly a massive wank. If you don't, well, tough shit. What I'm saying is that your life is essentially laid out for you, if you're extremely lucky, by the end of middle school, but probably sooner. Having to get into one of, let's say, 4 high schools in the country that'll get you into the university you need to do a specific career is wild. Entrance exams are everything. And it's not uncommon to see kids go and live alone because the school they got into is in Yokohama and their parents live in Miyagi. Or, if they don't get in, they'll go and work for their parents for a year while attending all the cram schools and trying again the next. It is wild. And understandably, this places a horrendous amount of pressure on children, often very young children, both from their teachers and their parents, and the brighter they are, and the more prestigious the career that they've generally been told they'll be doing, the more pressure. Oh, and not just academically. You'd also have to do very well in sport, or failing that, stuff like speech contests and school leadership. You'll also generally do volunteer work, and yeah, as I mentioned, all of the tutoring and cram school. It is hellish. And not only does it leave basically no time for just, being a kid, with your weekends and vacations filled with more school, more cram school, more sports practice, and more entrance exam and interview prep, with your studies comprising, forget 9 to 5, let's call it 5 to 9, but some schools play right into this, essentially banning fun. I was both fortunate and unfortunate enough to spend a few years teaching at one of the best academic schools in our prefecture, and I remember getting called in and given a complete bollocking because a teacher had spotted me buying a gaming console at our local K's Denki. I was told that neither students nor teachers are allowed to play video games, do karaoke, or watch movies, even in their own time out of school. Oh, and we weren't allowed to have social media either, because no distractions from work were permitted, and we were expected to set a good example. Naturally, I said sure, played stupid gaijin, and just went back to doing my thing. It also creates some very ugly situations, as I discussed in the previous Gantz video, where a family that has several smart, hard-working, and just good kids, but one kid is slightly better than all the rest, due to what it takes to get on the track for, say, a doctor career, they will throw all of their money, all of their time, and all of their energy behind that one slightly smarter kid, often resulting in neglect, or worse, of the others. And you will see this dynamic in just all the anime and manga. Think of Sasuke and Itachi, for instance. And this is very much Naoki's story. His brother was born an absolute freak, a diamond-plated genius prodigy with a perfect eidetic memory. He didn't need to work hard and achieved perfect results on every test. Naoki, however, despite being very smart, very hardworking, and achieving amazing results, the best scores in his school, the guy's clearly a talented young man, but to his mother, it didn't matter, as he was not his brother. Again, yeah, I wish I could say that I hadn't seen this sort of thing happening personally. This resulted in his mother endlessly treating him like he was a contemptuous failure, no matter how well he did. And this led Naoki to having no self-esteem and still working himself half to death in an attempt to prove his worth to his mother. And this is part of what drew him to Shizuka. Not only because she, well, allegedly looks kind of like his mother, yeah dude, I know it's a thing, but ew. But we see that Shizuka is still manipulating him, promising that if he gets sent to a reform school, yeah, again, the translation says juvie, but as stated, the two aren't even slightly comparable. And after kissing him, she leaves him to consider it in a very Jessica Lovejoy kind of way. Worse yet, it appears to have worked. At home, Junior sees that something is badly wrong with his little brother, and he tries to get him to talk about it. While Naoki doesn't say anything about the murder, he does open up to Junior slightly, telling him about his mother, her abuse, and his own feelings of inadequacy. To which Junior tells him not to worry, and okay, again, I am going to infer here. Junior says that his mother, despite her manner and her actions, actually really does love and care about him. And the reason she acts like this is because she is way more like Naoki than Junior. And come what may, she doesn't want him to have the hellishly hard life she had. I assume she just isn't good at expressing it. Now this little bit is ambiguous, so I'm going to give you a minor spoiler, just so we aren't wasting our time chasing our tails. It initially seems like Naoki did take the blame for the murder, but he hasn't. It's a poorly executed fake out. All of this actually prompted Naoki to finally break down and tell Junior the truth of the matter off panel. Again, it's a little confusing, but it's not terribly important. Shizuka, meanwhile, is off with Takopi. It's not entirely clear, but I think what she's saying is that Naoki may take the blame for her, but he may also just confess to the truth. Or potentially someone will get the truth out of him. She knows that the noose is drawing tighter and realizes that she may not have much time left here, but well, she isn't especially concerned. Like Cartman in that Casa Bonita episode, she has no long-term goal. All she wants is to go to Tokyo and see her dog. Takopi, on the other hand, is starting to come to his own conclusions. Shizuka seemed happy, he and Naoki were happy, to some degree, and they were all enjoying their time, playing together, and spending time together as a trio. Things were, in a screwed up way, becoming almost healthy. She has now put an end to this, and sure enough, Shizuka reappears, dressed in an almost comically ready for summer outfit. Oh, and she's holding a suika bar, one of the many things I miss from Japan. Think a watermelon ice lolly, but the rind is also sweet and the seeds are chocolate. It's made of 99% artificial additives, but damn it are those things gorgeous. And we smash cut to them in Shibuya, looking pretty damn ready. It's time to see the end of this plan out, but what will happen next? In Tokyo, and going solely off her father's address, Shizuka and Takopi make their way over to the high-rise where he lives, way up on the 14th floor. Yeah, pretty normal for central Tokyo, where living in a house means that you don't just have serious money, you also come from serious money. Tokyo is full of rich people, and for that you would need, well, wealth. We get a few really sweet panels, showing us that Shizuka isn't just excited to see Chappie, despite her manner. likely a product of her horrible life. As previously mentioned, her relationship with Chappie was presumably a large portion subconscious, this is all I have left of my father. Because, yeah, she really wants to see him too. They make their way up to his door, ring the bell and, oh shit. Her father answers, surprised to see her. In his arms is a baby, with another younger girl following happily behind him. He has remarried. And the fact that she doesn't know this and he's never visited, yikes. Now, okay, it's time for a semi-long tangent, but I'm not going to give it its own section, and I'm going to bulldoze through this as fast as possible. Keep in mind that I'm going to be simplifying a very complicated and nuanced matter, but I will do my best. This may be because of, well, as I alluded to earlier, divorce in Japan is quite new, at least as we understand the concept, and stuff like alimony, child support, and visitation are rather different. So, firstly, without going into too many details, no-fault divorce doesn't really exist, and divorce is not typically handled in court, unless it, well, sometimes it is. Let me explain briefly. So, let's say you want a divorce, and both of you consent. This is very easy. You sign some documents, I think there's a cooling off period in some places, and then you literally just go your separate ways. Bada bing, bada boom, no problem. This is most divorces, although take note, one party cannot simply serve the other party with papers and divorce them unilaterally. There is often, okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. If one party says no, either because they don't want to get divorced, or more likely are unhappy with the terms the other partner has set, then they will need to attend mediation. And this is where assets and money start coming into things. Because, as I said, alimony doesn't exist, and neither does community of property. As so far as I understand it, this means that a woman who gets divorced, either via mediation or agreement, will technically be left penniless, but if they own property, she will generally get the property, with her ex-husband paying it off. If they rent a place, her ex-husband will generally keep paying for it until she finds a place of her own, but this is more of a tradition than a matter of law. And again, it's very complicated. Failing this, the wife just has to kind of find her own way. She'll typically return to live with her parents, or failing that, in the familial property, at least if she's the eldest. If she's not, then she will generally kind of become a ward, along with her children, of whoever is. And this is not a nice situation. You may have seen this in anime and manga at times. It often becomes abusive, with her and any children she brought with being treated as a burden at best. Now, it can go to another phase, which is where things can get nasty. And to prevent it from having to go there, what is normal is the husband offering his wife what amounts to a bribe in lieu of alimony, just to get her to let the divorce go through, property as well as often a one-time payment, generally 1 to 2 million yen, so around 10 to 20,000 USD, sometimes more if he's rich. On the other hand, custody almost always falls 100% to the mother, and any paternal rights to visitation or having any say in their kids' lives on behalf of the father is non-existent. Any visitation or say is entirely up to the mother at her pleasure, and this gives both sides some form of leverage. Now, let's say all of this fails. One party still wants to get a divorce, and one party says no. This is where it'll go to a court and, whether it be that she wants to remain married, which in this situation in essence would look like the man just basically being trapped, or she doesn't accept the results of mediation, well, and here they would need a reason for the divorce, in that the divorce has to be at fault. This is typically related to infidelity or neglect, but sometimes abuse. In these cases, the court would grant the divorce, and the at-fault party would typically have to pay the wronged party a settlement representing the loss of the marriage. As far as I recall, it's something like 4 million yen for infidelity, and presumably more if the marriage broke down due to domestic violence or similar. Again, this part is extremely complicated. Divorcing via court takes forever and is stupidly expensive, and it's thus not especially common. More likely, dad agrees to throw ex-mom some more wonga, mom agrees to let dad see the kids whenever he wants, and there you go. However, neither of these are enforceable in any way. So yeah, again, it can get messy. If no cause is found, well, it's entirely possible for one partner to trap the other partner, and they will have to pretend, often with that partner hoping that the other partner steps out or crosses a line so they can sue and get a bunch of money. One final thing to consider, and we'll talk more about this if the chance arises, it's really sad. For a variety of reasons, being a divorced woman, especially a divorced woman with kids, has an enormous social stigma attached to it, even today, making it rather difficult to find jobs or accommodation, another reason why they will typically have to move in with their parents or in-laws. So the image of Shizuka's mother as a drunken mess who pays the bills via something that's really just a step away from prostitution, and this whole scenario where presumably dad just moved on, leaving wreckage in his wake, yeah, it's fucking atrocious for the kids too, but it's not even slightly far-fetched. Well, minus the alien. Anyways, not sure what to make of all of this, Shizuka tells him that she came to see her dog, and sure enough, she's greeted by a happy barking. As a dog comes charging towards them, her dad saying that, yeah, here's Chappy. Only when the dog appears, oh shit, man. And this is where the storytelling and the writing go supernova. So, a lot of what's been going on appears to have been some sort of unreliable narrator thing. As we see that, despite what we've been shown / told by Shizuka, with her happy, clean appearance, the summer outfit and stuff, well, it's really just been, and again, I am assuming here, I don't think this is ever explained. This is how she's looking in her own head, corresponding with her cheerful, albeit warped mental state. In reality, this is what she looks like. Filthy, disheveled, dressed in ragged clothes, and emaciated, presumably barely eating. She looks feral, and she's still carrying Chappy's collar. Holy shit, this is good. Now, I actually entertained that all of this, Takopi included, is partially a delusion, which, yeah, that would have been an actually amazing twist, albeit maybe a touch predictable, but no. Takopi is real. Is he the unreliable narrator? That's actually a good question. But yeah, all of the happiness in her life, her playing with her friends, laughing, and the corresponding cleaner, better groomed, and healthier appearance was going on in her head. In reality, she is more murder hobo than middle schooler. Now, what I think happened here, and no, I don't think this is ever fully explained either, is that A, Shizuka's mother lied and said that the dog went to her father when in actuality it was put down, or B, the dog did indeed go to her father, but a tiny Tokyo apartment is no place for an animal like a collie, and so he had to have it put down. I suspect the latter, which, damn it, this is so dark. We see them later, sitting under a bridge in the rain. Shizuka, who is now clearly well on her way to insanity, says that she suspects that what happened was the children ate Chappy. Yeah, she's going off the deep end. And no, we're not going to do the dog meat thing here either. I know it's a topic I've been dancing around, but yeah, while I do try and poke the comment section for engagement sometimes, I don't want to raise that specter here. One day, maybe, it's a very complex and very nuanced discussion. Not today. We see that she's back in her sort of happy / delusional state, asking Takopi to give her a gadget that traps people and checks inside their stomachs. Crikey Moses, you mean like a knife? Takopi, genuinely concerned, tells her that no, he doesn't have anything like that, and says maybe they should just go home and try and fix things. In response, she steals the transformation kit from him, hurting him in the process, planning to, oh crap, sneak into her father's apartment at night, trying to head off what this increasingly unhinged girl might be planning. Takopi begs her to return home with him, promising that they can have lots of fun. Hell, she can have free reign of his gadgets. He liked her before, you know, Miss Marina Manslaughter. In return, Shizuka gives him an odd look and then says that he's clearly not of any more use to her. The way she's looking at him triggers something, as Takopi recalls memories from a long time ago. Something about the planet Happy and some sort of commandment and the concept of sin. What? However, lost in his thoughts, he fails to hear Shizuka creeping up behind him with a rock. And then everything. We see Takopi. And, okay, this bit threw me, but I'm gonna try and explain. These are his memories. Getting bashed over the head by a psychotic Shizuka has somehow jarred them loose. Much as with last time, he landed and was found in a pipe by a girl. Oh, and I do love the subtle touch of the social distancing sign informing us of the period in which this happened. There are actually a lot of little COVID things in this segment, which again, that's clever. And it also really helps us to establish our timeline. This occurs a year or two later than the previous timeline. We cut over to see, wait, what in the ass? It's Marina, an older Marina. A nice touch is that she's making the literal exact face Shizuka did when she first met Takopi. Oh, there are some differences, as you'll soon see. Most noticeable though, an ugly looking scar on her face. And yes, this is where the story starts getting kind of hard to follow, so I'm going to do my level best. Again, if I get anything wrong, apologies, and let me know in the comments. We see a few differences. This Marina is a tough little tomboy, but pretty, quite popular in her own right, and attends a Larny-ass all-girls private Catholic high school, indicating that, yeah, this is our final confirmation that her father is loaded. At home, we see that things are also different. And yeah, for the longest time, I thought this was an alternate timeline, but it's not just that, we're a few years in the future. This later version of her mother is older, fatter, and her father is long gone. Mom is just drunk as a skunk, hell, a bag of skunks, and immediately begins threatening Marina with a broken glass because she didn't order more booze for her online. Oh dear. And to make matters worse, we learn that her scars are from a similar incident where her mother, in a drunken and possibly manic state, gashed her face open with a broken bottle. Holy shit, dude. Which I'm going to guess, again, a lot of this is from clues, like the obvious high school uniforms, happened at some point in time between her bullying Shizuka, having Chappie taken away, resulting in her Kermiting, and now. However, this is where things start getting interesting. We also learn that Marina has softened significantly since middle school, possibly due to a revelation at how dreadfully she was treating Shizuka, how unfair that situation was, and remorse at the outcome she created. My guess would be that after she carried out her mother's plan, nothing really changed between them, and once her mother's mental state deteriorated further, to the point where she seriously injured her daughter, Marina realized that, yeah, whatever the reason, her mother is poisonous and has poisoned her in turn. While she's outwardly a tomboy, now she just actually wants to be a better mother than her own one day and raise happy kids. To which, of course, the idiotic Takopi responds, Knack McFeagle style, by just launching her at the first boy they see. And this, by narrative causality, results in them becoming a couple. And later we see that, yeah, again, I'm going to be inferring here. At this point in time, Her father had already left and was pressuring Marina to get her mother into mediation with him. My guess is he's paying for her schooling. Mrs. Kirarazaka, however, likely in the hopes of more money, but possibly just delusional, and holding out hope for his return, refused to agree to the divorce or to attend mediation, meaning that, yeah, this would likely have to go to court, which would take ages and be really expensive. Or, more likely, he would have to just pretend they were married, as discussed earlier. We also learn that, oh boy, the kid Marina is seeing and has become absolutely smitten with is none other than the noble Naoki. We see that Marina and Takopi's time together mirrors his and Shizuka's eerily closely. After he arrived, her life finally took a turn for the better. One day, she and Naoki are walking along hand in hand, where they overhear a group of students discussing a transfer student coming over to attend school with them. Apparently, she's a real beauty, but had a bit of a hard time of it previously, including attempting to wait, what? No, it cannot be. Marina freezes, and Naoki can only stare as a familiar figure walks past them. It's Shizuka, looking a lot happier and has indeed grown up to be rather pretty. She survived her attempt to join the Muppet Show, and how do I even put this without triggering the YouTube bots? The reason she survived was that she used an old rope, which broke, rather than Takopi's ribbon. This is never spelled out, but it's really clever, as had he not been in that timeline, Shizuka would have survived. His presence was the problem. But without Marina around to make her life hell, Marina having transferred schools after what had almost certainly been a scandal, she had clawed her way back to daylight and is now, well, a beautiful, intelligent young woman. We later learn that Naoki left Marina for Shizuka, be this an ingenious revenge or simple kismet, and we see that they immediately reconnected while Marina goes home in misery and tells her mother what happened. We get a really touching scene of Marina's mother and her crying together about this very sad outcome, and then her mother suddenly attacks her with a glass again in an utter drunken fury. Presumably, Marina's mother had, at least in part, been living out a fantasy life through her daughter, attaining revenge on Mrs. Kuze, and then meeting the boy of her dreams. Takopi, who had gone off to see what was up with Naoki, returns, and holy shit, what the hell? Off panel, Marina has slashed her mother's throat and sits there, having gone completely off the deep end, saying that she should have killed Shizuka herself back in the day. If she had, her mother would be alive, she'd have Naoki, and somehow that would have been the charm. Shizuka's mother wouldn't have been there for her father to fall for, and everything would have worked out. Takopi, imploding mentally himself, says that he knows just what to do, getting back in his rocket ship, and tells her that he's going to go back to his home planet to use the clock he talked about before to go back in time, back to when the two girls were in middle school, and kill Shizuka for her. Oh, and after he leaves, naturally, Marina becomes a Muppet off panel using the broken glass. Bloody hell, this manga. Back on Takopi's home planet, we get a very strange sequence, and no, it's not especially long or well explained in the manga either. Let me do my best. Takopi returned to his planet, but when they learned what he was planning, his mother, a colossal octopus-like creature that governs the planet, erased his memory. And we learn that the commandment he broke was intending to use his abilities and technology to kill Shizuka Kuze in the 4th grade to help Marina attain happiness. He is able to fight off his people momentarily, astonishing them with his newfound capacity for violence, the Happians being a peaceful race, remember. It appears that the little creature has become corrupted by Earth. Takopi activates the clock, jumps in his rocket, and travels back to Earth in the year 2016. But as he does, we get a pretty sad sequence showing that his own memories of Marina are fading. So yeah, this is where the story started. All he was left with was his directive to spread happiness. And like all good time loop stories, we could not have even begun to sort out the tangled ball of Christmas light causality. But now, with a lot of things given context, yeah, it's cool, and it's holy shit levels of tragic. The girl Takopi meant to help was the girl he wound up killing, and the girl he meant to kill, he wound up helping, but also killing. And now, Takopi remembers everything, giving us my favorite panel in the entire manga. It's very Oyasumi Punpun, which yes, I will tackle one day, okay TrpyCris, and also weirdly terrifying. And this is followed by a perfect bit of writing, as Takopi, his memories now restored, puts all of the pieces together and tries to figure out what next. He is there to help Marina. Shizuka is evil. She manipulates everyone around her, making them do awful things, and she's gone completely off the deep end. Even if she hadn't, she's responsible for taking Naoki from Marina, which resulted in Marina, in the future, becoming a filicide and finally a Muppet too. So Shizuka is the villain here and must die. But no, wait, that doesn't work out either. Everything stems from Marina's treatment of Shizuka, which literally pushed her into Kermiting, as Marina took everything from her out of pure spite, due to an issue between their families that Shizuka had no control over. And Shizuka, well, for all of her flaws, is, somewhere deep down, a good person. She treated Takopi with mercy at the start, giving him her food when he was starving. Whatever these two girls were, whatever their traumas made them, there is good in both of them. So what now? How do you square this circle? He is interrupted by Naoki, which gives us a protracted but honestly not especially important sequence. Cliff notes, part of the reason why Naoki's mother is the way she is due to the fact that she's alone, under intense stress, and between then and now eventually collapsed. Possibly a case of karoshi. We'll talk about this one day. Call it death by overwork. He and Junya are going to stay home and help out until she's recovered. He will thus no longer be able to spend any time with Shizuka and Takopi. Now, I'm going to make an educated guess here and say this is partially a plan that Junya came up with. They will leave Marina's death unsolved. But for Naoki to save himself and get himself out of a bad situation and away from toxic people, Naoki is just going to walk away. And this is going to tie us into the core thesis of the manga, which I will go over at the end. Takopi, in a really sad sequence, begs Naoki to stay, as he is the only unambiguously good person in all of this. Takopi wants to make Shizuka happy, but he also doesn't understand anything. Shizuka's evil. She hurt Marina, she hurt Takopi, and is doing all sorts of insanely horrible stuff right now. But at the same time, she's a good person. She's been kind to him and has been dreadfully hurt. Marina was his original charge, his ward, his friend, and he wanted to make her happy, but she tormented Shizuka into doing something drastic. How the hell does this all work? And more importantly, where in the ever-loving hell do you even start to sort this out? Which girl is the villain here? Naoki cuts him off, saying that Takopi is an idiot. He doesn't understand people, because this is how people are. Humans are capable of good stuff and bad stuff. And this is essential to our humanity and surviving in society. There is a duality to our nature. Takopi, on the other hand, is only good and innocent, and this makes him as impressionable as Silly Putty. He cannot survive on Earth and will simply become corrupted. Maybe you need a bit of good and a bit of evil in you to get by here. Otherwise, you get caught up in this sort of binary thinking, and awful things can result. In the words of the great Sir Terry Pratchett, humans are where the falling angel meets the rising ape. And yes, I've been waiting for a chance to say that for a while now. Boy, we all lost out when you died, mate. He goes on to say, that they all wanted to save Shizuka, but their efforts only ended in tragedy, much like Takopi's did with Marina. Maybe you can't really help people like that. You can only do what you can and give them the tools to help themselves. There is also this thing about Naoki needing to fight with Junior more, which, no, I don't understand it. But he does say a farewell to Takopi, and it's actually really touching, especially when we see a very sad Takopi waving a mournful goodbye to this genuinely good young man, then finds himself alone with his thoughts, sitting there on his pipe under the stars. What now? As our third and final act begins, and we close in on the endgame, we see that time passes in an almost clunky montage sequence. It took me a while to figure out what was happening. We go through summer, autumn, and finally we enter winter. And this, as I said, this is one of two parts in the story that I think were executed poorly. Keep in mind that I love this manga, but, well, it does have flaws. We get a single cramped panel filling in what happened to Shizuka during this time. Somehow, she survived her time in Tokyo, I presume living rough, and used the gadget to kidnap her half-sisters. She definitely sensed that things were closing in on her, as she was being sought for questioning in Marina's death. My guess is that Junior dobbed her in. The sisters were found several months later, traumatized but safe. However, that's a family that's gonna need some counseling. I do wish we'd seen more of this, as it represents Shizuka going from a troubled young woman to, kermiting, to gradually becoming a manipulative, cruel little sociopath, and finally escalating her behavior into violence and outright kidnapping. But it is what it is. At last, as spring rolls around, Takopi is surprised one evening to see a familiar figure. And we notice that this is a haggard and completely off her nut Shizuka. We get another brief peek at the author's thesis here. Takopi is, perhaps, starting to understand how complicated humans are. When we're struggling, we make all sorts of wishes, but these tend to be ad hoc. We change the small details on the margins, but ignore that our situation doesn't exist in a vacuum. I know I'm going to be quoting Sir Terry Pratchett a lot here, but he talks about this extensively, particularly in two of my favourite books, although honestly, there are a lot of high cards in that hand. Hogfather and Witches Abroad, silly names I know, but trust me on this, they rule. The goal is not to give people what they wish for. This only tends to make things worse. The goal is to give them what they need. Shizuka tells him that she's just making a quick stop. This filthy, emaciated, and completely out of it girl is, presumably with his gadgets, is about to launch a full frontal assault on animal control next, and will presumably keep hitting targets until she finds her dog. Takopi, surprisingly, refuses, standing up to her, and even though she becomes more and more threatening, he refuses to back down, saying that this has to end. It is wrong. Shizuka then attacks Takopi, beating him viciously. While, this is really good writing. She basically outlines her position. What the utter blithering hell is she supposed to do? She was being bullied literally to death. Everyone hates her. Her mother doesn't care. Her father's long gone and moved on. She's malnourished and dirty. She stinks and has literally nobody. All she had was her dog, and now that is gone. Which, I really get it. It's easy to be nice and upstanding when you have money, friends, and power, and people in your corner. But when you're alone and only just surviving, what then? What do you do when the world as a whole takes a massive steaming shit on you over and over again? At what point do you turn around, say, not my problem, and stop trying to make lemonade, instead whipping the lemons right back and adding a few of your own. Holy crap, this panel is good. As she screams into his face, then picks up a rock and prepares to kill Takopi. However, rather than his usual response, which would likely have been aggressively cheerful and making some sort of silly, vapid suggestion, the crying Takopi says that he doesn't know. He instead takes responsibility for his part in this. Maybe what Shizuka needed wasn't a quick fix. Maybe she needed someone to actually talk her through all of this and find the root cause of the problem, or maybe just listen. Or, okay, we are actually getting ahead of ourselves, but this is a beautifully written sequence, as a genuinely sad Takopi has begun to use his little octopus brain, but it may well be too late for Shizuka. Finally, as she is about to bop him one, he suddenly realizes that she is also crying. Shizuka, at the very last second, before she murders her final friend in the world, has a moment of clarity. Apologies are all well and good, but how is she supposed to go on? Saying that she has to face reality is fine in theory, but her reality is miserable. What does she do? He's got no answers, and instead does the only right thing in this scenario. He doesn't try to fix it, he doesn't try to cheer her up. He acknowledges her feelings, hugs her, and as she begins to sob, they cry together. Holy shit, this manga's good. Eventually, Shizuka falls asleep, somehow surviving sleeping rough in Hokkaido in spring. No, seriously, you would be an icicle by the time you woke up. But we do get another montage, showing that a bit of time is passing. Shizuka returns to reality, and Takopi gradually helps her to get cleaned up. However, while she may have been saved in a sense, in another one, what the hell do they do now? The police are looking for her, not just for the kidnappings, but for the murder of Marina. And my pet alien did it, but it's okay, we've sorted things out now, probably wouldn't fly. As they stand and look out over the ocean together, it appears that there is no right move available to them at all. And alright, what follows is another somehow both really cool, but also unfortunately scuffed sequence. They spend the day by the sea, no closer to finding an answer. But as night falls, Takopi at last realizes that there is something he can do. They would need a gadget, and well, if only they could activate the camera again. But it's broken due to, being used as an improvised mace. And, alright. Now, I am going to raise a little fan theory here. It's probably going to be like my essential fluid thing in Gantz, in that it's probably not canon, but I think it's so much better. What we see is that Takopi has revealed that there is a way to fix the camera. He picks it up, does something, and to her horror, Shizuka realizes that something is happening to him as a fine dust begins to appear and blow off of him. And then she clicks as to what's happening. As if Thanos had snapped his fingers, Takopi is disintegrating. Somehow, by willingly giving up his life, he's able to briefly repair the camera enough for one final use. Now, what I hope is happening, and it's just explained or perhaps translated poorly, is that he has used the camera to go back and essentially erase himself from the timeline, creating a paradox, the resolution of which will hopefully fix everything. Yes, I know it's kind of circular, but the other explanation really just comes down to stuff happened. So we'll go with that. Anyways, I won't lie, this sequence makes me friggin' cry. Shizuka, realizing what's happening, begs him not to go. If he does, she truly will be left with nobody. Girl, you were about to murder him a second ago. But yeah, he is her only friend left. Takopi, however, says one last time that his mission has always been to make her smile, and he's about to. Damn it. He's come to the same conclusion as Tiffany Aching in that absolutely perfect book. In a traditional story of 3 wishes, the third wish exists for one reason and one reason only: to undo the first two wishes and restore the damage they did, thanking her for the food and for being his friend. As a bawling Shizuka can only tell him to wait, the little creature at last crumbles into dust, vanishes, and as his essence is erased from the timeline, in an immense flash of light, the camera activates. Our world falls away, and then Shizuka Kuze finds herself alone, sitting on the now uninhabited pipe. We get an extended epilogue sequence. Shizuka wakes up in her filthy house, cuddling Chappie. We have indeed travelled back in time, this time to the very start of the story. We see her begin her day as normal. As an unseen narrator, I'm guessing this is somehow Takopi, tells us what's happening as a miserable Shizuka makes her way to school and sits down on her graffitoed desk. Marina appears and immediately starts with her bullshit, but something is slightly different this time. No, not just because we've actually come to understand Marina a little bit and why she is doing what she's doing, but because something is indeed a little different. Pausing, Marina suddenly asks Shizuka why she's not wearing her flower, and then stalls. What flower? And why does Marina also remember something else about the flower? Yeah, this stuff is what led me to my little fan theory, because there are paradoxes resolving themselves here, and maybe for the better. We see that Naoki is also different. He is no longer attempting to be a people pleaser. He instead takes a risk, and through the magic of having a video game console at home, yeah, that checks out, is suddenly drowning in friends. Now, this is confusing, but I think that somehow his future self has advised his past self via Takopi to do things differently. Again, fan theory, but the right answer was neither Marina nor Shizuka. In order to be happy and healthy, he had to separate himself entirely from both. As a miserable Shizuka is left standing alone once again, with not even Naoki in her corner, it appears that this timeline, the last one, is going to end up much the same as the first, second. This shit's confusing. I'll explain it as best I can at the end. But bullying and loneliness will escalate to the Muppet Show once Marina's plan to kill Chappie succeeds. And so we're doing the loop where Marina and her mother die later, after a healed Shizuka steals Naoki from her? That can't be right. Later, we see Marina once again beating up Shizuka, cursing her for the actions of her mother, but now knowing the truth. Once again, a large portion of this manga, I suspect, is supposed to be an unreliable narrator thing. Marina's tears and sadness are visible to us now. As we've gained understanding, we can observe the world as it truly is. Both of these characters are alone, abused, miserable, and doomed. Shizuka will soon aspire to Muppethood, and Marina, in a year or two, will lose Naoki to a vengeful Shizuka, prompting the fight between Marina and her mother, which will result in both of their deaths. Then, something inexplicable happens, as the paradox finally resolves. As Marina prepares to stab Shizuka with her pen, her workbook falls open, and it's revealed that she is, well, a consummate doodler. The margins are filled with little sketches. Most of these are innocuous, but one immediately catches Marina's eye. It's a small, silly-looking, octopus-like creature. Somehow, rather than continuing, Marina finds herself distracted and asks what on earth that is. The creature seems strangely familiar. Shizuka says that it is indeed odd. It looks concerned, like it wants to take care of them and stay with them in an annoying, talkative way. We then see that both of the girls have begun to smile. Despite what had been going on, they find themselves falling into a strange discussion, and then they both begin to cry. then sob, and finally, sitting together, the pair completely break down. Rather than fight and plot and all of that, they have found some common ground at last in mutual sorrow and trauma, but also a single, inexplicable shared element, that strangely familiar picture of a little space alien that is gone but somehow not forgotten. In another sequence, Takopi continues to narrate over imagery showing us the progression of time, saying that he's sorry he was unable to fix anything. A broken family will remain broken. The dead will remain dead. A lost love will almost certainly remain lost. But that's life, and it's all we can do to just keep moving forwards. For this too shall pass, and with any luck, they will move forwards with a few scars, but grow up to be happier adults. Then, somewhere else, be it null space, be it the author's head, a smiling Takopi thanks the reader, and shedding a last tear, says bye-bye. We get a final coda, a small vignette closing out the manga. It's a very brief sequence set some years later, possibly high school, but possibly university or later. A much older Shizuka and Marina are window shopping together, while an elderly chappie, confirmed to be alive, naps on the grass nearby. As they do, they talk, and we see that they have become firm friends. Not just through the little paradox of Takopi's doodle, but due to their shitty home lives, remonstrating about how rough their mothers are, but it's mostly just banter, a safety valve between friends. Everywhere, they find things that somehow remind them of Takopi, including a familiar little pen and remembering what he called the little mascot on top of it. They laugh, and then they wonder about what the hell they're talking about. And thus ends the story. Holy crap, what a ride! And, well, that's the end. So feel free to go and watch another video, hint hint, or you could always stick around if you want me to attempt an explanation of what exactly happened here, as well as why. Some of the themes that may be in play and inspirations for this manga. Otherwise, take care, and I'll be seeing you soon with some goldfish. Okay, so you're still here. Alrighty then. Now, as you saw in our Biomega full story, or listened, or what have you, we're going to be including a new segment at the very end of these mega videos to discuss the what of the manga in terms of how it all played out in a short chronological summary, but also the why of the manga, as in what was the point. So, briefly, and again, keep in mind, as always, that some of this will be inferences, my own theories, and interpretation based on clues, as well as, I guess, a few loose consensus developed online. So, we have 3 timelines in play, and to understand what the hell happened here, we kind of need to go through these timelines. And with it being time travel, this does get a little convoluted. So, in Loop 1, a bunch of truly unpleasant goings-on happened in 2015 and 2016. After Takeshi Kuze left his wife and family, he moved to Tokyo. The ex-Mrs. Kuze was forced to seek employment as a hostess. As her life fell apart, she stopped caring about her home and began neglecting her daughter, a 12-year-old girl by the name of Shizuka. As a hostess, Mrs. Kuze gained the attention of a man, Mr. Kirarazaka, who fell for her and, in turn, began having likely some sort of one-sided emotional affair with her, prompting him to become emotionally abusive and eventually desert his own wife, giving Mrs. Kuze her wedding ring as a gift. In response, Mrs. Kirarazaka began drinking heavily, triggering some sort of latent mental illness, and she slowly became abusive towards her daughter Marina. Marina, trying to win back her mother's affection and at least somewhat at her bidding, began bullying Shizuka Kuze in order to get back at Mrs. Kuze, turning her into the class outcast. This bullying escalated until it culminated in a really nasty plot to try and get Shizuka to become, let's say, a Muppet by getting her dog confiscated and later euthanized. Shizuka did indeed eventually try to curb it, but the attempt was unsuccessful. Mrs. Kirarazaka, in a drunken rage, gashed her daughter's face with a broken glass and steadily became more and more abusive. My guess would be that Marina, after the attempt, sort of got cold feet, realizing that all of this had gone way too far. Mr. Kirarazaka, at some point, possibly to protect her from her mother, sent Marina away to an all-girls school. My guess would be, though, that this is due to the scandal surrounding her bullying Shizuka into attempting. Shizuka, having survived the attempt, eventually found some sort of peace and was able to pull herself out of depression somehow. Later, in 2022, an alien was sent from Planet Happy to spread joy to those who needed it on Earth. This creature would eventually become known as Takopi. Now, Takopi encountered Marina, who had left her bullying ways behind her. My guess would be that she realized that she would never earn her mother's affection and dreadfully regretted what she did to Shizuka, only wanting to become a better mother than her own. And trying to help her to be happy, Takopi set about finding her a husband-to-be, resulting in her and a genius student, Naoki, becoming a couple. Marina fell deeply in love with this young man. However, Shizuka, surviving the attempt and having become a beautiful young woman, began to attend the all-girls school too as an exchange student in what may have been a revenge plot against Marina, but this is never explained. She successfully seduced Naoki into leaving Marina for the now beautiful and possibly savvy Shizuka. And this resulted in an awful chain of events, where a cataclysmic argument between Marina and her mother escalated into a physical fight, during which she slit her mother's throat and became a Muppet shortly after. Yes, hintity hint, dancity dance. Takopi, in a quest to save Marina, traveled back to his home planet and utilized a crazily powerful artifact to return him to 2016 in order to kill Shizuka, allowing Marina and Naoki to be together in the future. However, while he succeeded in traveling back in time, he was punished by his people, losing his memories. This starts Timeline 2. In Timeline 2, Takopi landed in 2016, amnesiac and starving. He encountered the younger Shizuka at the start of our story, and after she gave him some of her food, with his murder plan forgotten, he set about trying to help her to be happy by countering the bullying she was experiencing at the hands of Marina, eventually resorting to a camera-like gadget with the power to rewind time. However, due to Marina's cunning, no matter what Takopi tried, his efforts eventually stalled out once they reached the part of the timeline where Chappie is taken away, allegedly being sent to live with the estranged Mr. Kuze in Tokyo, but more likely winding up being put down. However, due to Takopi's meddling, Shizuka's attempt was successful this time, as she used one of his gadgets to do the deed. In order to try and save Shizuka, he rewinded time over 30 times, and finally, in desperation, he winds up beating Marina to death with the camera, which made Shizuka happy at last. They roped in a young Naoki, who was revealed to have always had a massive crush on Shizuka due to his own tragic home life, into the plot, and using another gadget, they concealed the body, as well as having Takopi impersonate Marina with yet another gadget, where he became privy to her mother's deteriorating mental state. Eventually, Naoki left the group after an increasingly erratic Shizuka tried to manipulate him into taking the blame for the murder, telling his brother what had happened, while Shizuka travels to Tokyo with Takopi to visit her dog, where she learned that the dog was gone and that her father had moved on long ago. This began a rapidly tightening downward spiral, where Shizuka forcibly took a gadget from Takopi, then attempted to kill him with a rock, somehow restoring his memories. While an injured and bewildered Takopi traveled back to Hokkaido, a now insane Shizuka kidnapped her half-sisters, and finally, realizing that all of it had gone way too far, Takopi was eventually able to bring Shizuka back to her senses, not by trying ad hoc methods to cheer her up, but by listening to her, admitting that he had no answers, and just accepting that her life sucks right now. To try and atone for all of this, and realizing that he was the problem all along. In Timeline 1, he caused Naoki and Marina to start to date, leading to her death. And in Timeline 2, he caused Shizuka's death, and then, by attempting to prevent her death, he caused Marina's and a bunch of other horrible stuff to happen. In Atonement, he essentially erased himself from reality, restoring the camera and resetting the timeline one last time. Our final timeline, Timeline 3, is our good ending. Here, Marina and Shizuka bond over the inexplicable artifacts of Takopi's existence, left behind as a paradox sort of corrects itself, as well as their own trauma, becoming friends. It's a really good story. But what's the point of all of this? Well, there's quite a lot to unpack. For one, it's definitely an acknowledgement of the duality of human nature, a necessary duality for us to survive on Earth. Rising ape, falling angel, remember? An innocent, entirely good being simply cannot survive here and will become corrupted. But the major one is what I would call the fairy godmother problem. What someone wants in the moment, or the immediate fix to a bad situation, is not typically what is needed. Just look at how most lottery winners fare. In trying to make Marina happy, Takopi set in motion events that killed her. In trying to make Shizuka happy, he set in motion events that either killed her or killed Marina. Happiness cannot be conferred. People cannot be fixed. All you can do is listen and help out where you can. But the core one, and the major thrust of the manga is, well, I know that as an adult, especially someone pushing well into middle age now, it's easy to look at kids and go, oh, you lucky bastards, you've got it so easy. Forgetting that, yeah, childhood can suck. Especially if you're the victim of bullying, lack friends, and have a crappy home life, as there really is nothing you can do by yourself. If other kids are asses, as they are wont to be, and if adults will not help or cannot help, yeah, but here's the thing. And I think this is what's spelled out on this page of the manga. Being a kid can be amazingly shitty, but the nice thing about childhood is that, unlike adulthood, well, it ends. Yes, I know adulthood ends too, but not in a way that's encouraging. Shizuka had a horrible time, being driven to a Kermit attempt by Marina's bullying. However, she survived and returned seemingly well-adjusted, kind of beautiful, and even wound up getting the guy. Marina, in turn, was horribly abused and became a legit monster as a result. But once this phase was over, she softened, found love, and made a life for herself. And in the third timeline, the pair became friends and remained friends as they got older, bonding over their shitty families, which is sort of nice if you think about it. A weirdly optimistic perspective for such a bleak manga. Things may suck right now, but who knows what the future holds. The thing about quality of life is that, while there is life, there is quality, and sometimes even a faint hope is better than nothing. Now, one last thing. There is another way to read all of this, and this is what I've been hinting at since the start. So, if you haven't clicked already, this manga is, in a lot of ways, a very mean-spirited parody of a specific sort of Japanese kids show. We're talking stuff like Yokai Watch, but especially Doraemon. For those that don't know, Doraemon involves a robotic cat creature sent back from the future to help a young boy navigate his life via, let's say, familiar similarly omnipotent but unassuming gadgets. It's a show that is, how would I put this, amazingly inoffensive. One part edutainment, one part comedy, and one part a very, very mild drama. Oh, and if you want more evidence that Takopi is Doraemon, one of the main characters and the sort of pseudo-love interest for Nobita, the protagonist, is, you guessed it, named Shizuka. And I think the premise here is that Doraemon would have turned out to be a villain, albeit unintentionally, had he come to the real world rather than a prosaic fictional Japan. I would bet you dollars to happy cameras that this manga as a whole stems from Taizan asking just how badly would it have gone had Doraemon come to the Earth in reality. What harms would he unintentionally have inflicted? How corrupted would he have become, and what steps would have been required to set things right again? It's a fascinating thought. So there we have it, folks. Takopi no Genzai. I hope you had fun. Anyways, before we finish for the day, I just want to give a massive owl thanks, as always, to our amazing patrons. And I suppose channel members. Sorry, I always forget that's a thing, without whom this video probably wouldn't exist. I am not even slightly kidding, so yeah, if you're looking for someone to thank for making this, these folks are your first stop. And yeah, as always, with a bunch of new people coming in, I'm almost certainly going to cock this up. Please let me know in the comments if I miss you, or more likely persistently mispronounce your name. Nakzul, Ryan Charles, Frosty Tian, Rosie, R.J. Grendelsire, Harrison Clements, Cookie Dough, Emily, Amber, Frank Hartnett, Cam Trigger, Melissa Marston, BK, Taylor Smith, Ang, Alice Teacup, Melly Pepper, Sam Glasper, Majestic, Brendan, Kamarian Lindsay, Taylor Smith, Tak2M, Sefit, Anna MC, Muhaku, Huna Hexchen, Ad Clear Andrew, Nate Corbin, Fluffy Burb, Kamolian, Endymion, Jake, The Empress, Simone, Squid, The Hedgehog Gamer, Rafferty, Hashtag Hermit, Yorgborg, William, Oishi Bum, Aaron Arnolds, Sallyface, Kane, Konzen Doji 180, Fergus McFirkin, Mootle, Maverick Mooner, Hamwise the Stout, Gunslinger Zero, Jalen R, Mike, Chilled Ice, Ranger Danger, Rose Montgomery, Inukie Koji, John Knepp, Kel Kaur, Opinion Custard, Robert Dote, Wargle, Hunting for R2D2, Jalen R, Lee, Eleanor, Crazy, Question Man 6, Eric Scott DeB, Ring Mescal / Mina, TrpyCris, JL, Lance Goebel, Joseph Barrett, JMD Raid, and Lightspeed. I also want to give an even specialer owl thanks to our resident Owlbard patrons, Jathis and Fogweaver. That is so generous. Wow, huge thanks. And as always, I'm also sure that there's at least one person I have forgotten, so to you, my apologies. Please let me know, and thanks anyway. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, comment, and all that good jazz. It really does help the video out in terms of the bloody algorithm. And otherwise, if you want to support this channel, please consider patroning up. You'll get access to some pretty cool perks like exclusive emotes on the Discord, an exclusive channel, early access to videos, an exclusive video, and I'll make some more eventually, my book, and a couple of other things, including a specific thing. Sorry, I can't be more specific at this point in time. We're still planning it. It's gonna be cool. White Whistle and Owlbard patrons can also commission videos and deep dives, and patrons as a whole do have a lot of input on what manga I cover on this channel and how. If you fancy supporting us in other ways, you could leave us one of those super thanks, and Mrs. Owl's commissions are still open, so if you're looking for some art as a birthday present or something, an OC, or for your book to be edited, all of her links are in the description. Cheers, my friends, and thanks again. Until next time, this is the Owl, signing off.